Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If Guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei was an unknown dragon and got harem. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. My name is Issei Hyoto, and I was born a human. From the moment of my birth, my body conflicted against itself. The seemingly hundreds of doctors that my family went to all said the same thing: my life was going to end soon, very soon. Apparently, for some unknown reason, I had a rare form of autoimmunity that made it so my right and left sides actually attacked each other and circulated different blood types for that matter. It was actually observed by one incredible doctor we visited often that the white blood cells on my left and right sides would actually on occasion attack the cells of the other side. My parents and family came to visit me a lot when I was sick, and I honestly don't even remember how many times I saw my parents crying when they thought I was asleep, crying until they simply didn't have the tears to do so. My physical state was, obviously, terrible due to the sickness I endured, but my psychological mind was really underdeveloped. It's so bad that even today I can still be considered shy, as my personality bloomed late. That's a story for another time though. Anyways, most of the doctors that didn't think I would die right off the bat thought, or at least said, that it would be a miracle if I made it to a teenager. Yet here I am, 15. I haven't attended a public school in over 10 years, since I first tried to go to kindergarten for a week, but didn't last a day. My sickness was strange, as there would be jumps and drops in my health. On my best day, I could actually go outside if I wanted to, and see the beautiful world outside of the room I was in most of the time I got sick. On my worst days, however, I rarely stayed conscious. Recently, my health dropped so low that the tears thought gone reappeared in my mother's eyes, and I started to have unexplainable seizures in which I thought I saw random people in my head. I hadn't seen them before, but even I could tell they were important as they flashed through my head. A beautiful, well-endowed girl with long, curly red hair and playful eyes. Another similar girl with calm eyes and long, straight blue hair to her knees in the back. A boy, smiling and blonde, swinging a strange yet intricate-looking sword. There were far more, but those were the easiest to remember. Last week, my health returned to normal, no, better than normal. The visions I experienced finally left me, and I could actually roam the house for a while before we went to one of my last doctor visits. He was shocked. A week ago, he had seen a pale-faced, fragile boy. Now, he saw a teenager with brown hair that could actually stand on his own 2 feet. After a bit of talking with my parents, it was decided that I would go to school and be like a regular teenager. So here I am, at a nearby high school. From what I heard from my mother, the school used to have only girls in it, before it started to accept the other gender. She was really worried to let me go, but I assured her I would be fine, better than fine in fact. It might be the only time I could actually talk to people my own age, which hadn't happened since I had had a close friend when I was around 5, who came over every day even when I was sick, before moving away. I got a schedule from my counselor, who seemed rather busy as he wasn't exactly patient with my slow thinking and movement. I got a schedule from him, and then walked onto the actual school campus, which was much bigger than I would have thought. The first loud ring of the bell startled me so much that I fell to the ground as I waited outside, and before realized, hundreds of students surged out of their classes. I simply sat on the bench, jaw open and flabbergasted at the sheer number of people in the school. Soon, however, the second bell sounded and I had yet to know where my first or even second class was. After the next ring sounded, I tried to get somebody to help me find my classes, but nobody paid any attention to me, although a few times I felt someone staring and turned in one direction to find a group of girls, just nobody staring at me anymore. After another ring, I became a bit impatient and tapped on the shoulder of the nearest person I could find, and that happened to be a short white-haired girl who, from my home readings, could be called a loli. Sorry to bother you, but this is my first time in a school for a long, long time. Do you know where these classes are? I asked the short girl, giving her my schedule. She looked over them for a second before looking up at me. I saw her mouth move, but I didn't hear her speak. I was too busy staring at her as I experienced a small flash in my mind. When I pictured her, she looked exactly as she did in real life, only she had a white tail and ears. Everything else was the exact same though: the school uniform, her expression, the size and color of her eyes, everything. Visions of her in particular flashed through my mind as I held my temple until a single solid word came to mind. Nakamata, I said to her as soon as I could, and when I looked at her, she looked even more pale than she had already been, and I could easily imagine her picking me up and throwing me 40 feet for some reason. Sorry, that's a demon cat, right? She asked, narrowing her eyes a bit before playing the innocent act. Look, I'm sorry if this is very sudden, but do you know someone in the school with curly red hair? I think her name starts with R. It's Rise. No, Risa. No, isn't it? Riaz, the girl asked, her eyes now full of shock. Go to this place after school, and you'll meet her. Until then, good luck with your classes, she said, writing something down and giving it to me along with my schedule, before running off to her next class. Well, thanks, I muttered as she ran to her next class, and the bell rang. After classes were over, I was walking out of one of my classes when I spotted 2 guys dragging a girl between them. She turned and let out a muffled scream before they disappeared into the brush. I tried to get anyone's attention, but nobody paid me any, even when I yelled. Cursing, I ran straight into the brush, feeling a boost of adrenaline in my system as I saw the 3 people again, their backs to me. Immediately, I ran and punched both of the guys in the back of their heads, but my hands went straight through, and they disappeared as if formed by smoke. I stared, gaping, and said, "What the?" before I felt a sharp pain in my chest. When I looked down, I saw the tip of a spear fashioned by light sticking out of my chest and fell onto my knees, my vision starting to fade. My hearing didn't fade just yet though, and I heard, "Wow, this is a tough one." That spear was supposed to go straight through him. Before my vision went dark, the ground shook as I went, and I heard disoriented screams and more explosions before the darkness claimed me. When I could feel or hear anything again, I was weightless. My vision was still dark, of course, but I could feel my body as if it were on fire, my heart hurt, my head hurt, places I didn't think could hurt. However, I could hear 2 people, female, talking. At first, I couldn't hear anything more than murmuring, but their voices became more and more clear. "Please, Sona-san. We are friends, please, just 2 pieces. The first voice said. "Ria-san, you know I cannot allow you to gain this one. He is far, far too powerful," a second, more calculating voice responded. "Sona-san, have you forgotten before when I allowed you to have that Black Dragon King wielder? This is completely different. Before, I didn't ask for 2 pawn pieces from you, and I don't expect you to have to do so to me. Sona-san, please, what will it take for you to simply let me have this one? His cost is 10 pawn pieces, please, help me." "Fine, I will help you. Thank you so much. In exchange for a favor." "Okay, what is this favor?" "In the future, there may be an instance in which I need the services of this human. When that day comes, he shall join my team and become my pawn. After all, he does account for 2 of my pawns, and thus is my servant as much as he is yours, Rias. When that happens, he shall join my team for raiding games. Of course, Sona-san, that is a small price to pay. Good, here, the 2 pawn pieces. Good luck with him." With that, I felt a new strength filling my body before I once again lost conscious. I opened my eyes and saw nothing. All around me was black darkness, and I was the only thing there. Suddenly, however, I felt a rumbling noise and looked around, trying to find the source of the noise. A deep voice came from my left. I turned to it, about to say something, before a noise from my right sounded. I heard, Who are you?" I asked, bewildered. "Nice to finally meet you, brat. My name is D-Drag, the Crimson Dragon Emperor." "Dragon?" I asked, before once again things went dark. This time when I opened my eyes, I was in a room that was decorated strangely. It was much more like a house than anything, as there was a small kitchen area. Looking outside, I could see the sun was still up, although going down quickly. I sat on a comfy couch, as there were 4 couches in the living room area of the place. The 4 couches were facing each other in a sort of cross, and I was in one of them. Across from me sat a beautiful curly red-haired girl, and she was staring at me intently. Next to her stood another beautiful girl, with long blue hair that went down to her legs in the back, as it was in a small tail. She had a kind expression, although I could almost sense a sadist feeling from her. Next to me, on my left to be exact, sat a blonde boy my age, with hair almost to his eyes. He looked like the avatar of royalty and popularity, and was staring at me intently. Next to him sat the little Kohai from this morning, or maybe yesterday's morning. She had white short hair and yellowish eyes. Once again, when I looked at her, a picture flashed in my head of her with white ears poking out of her hair and a long, cute tail. The redhead spoke first. "Now then, Issei-san, I am going to explain some new truths to your life and the world that you most likely did not know before. Stop me if anything becomes too overwhelming." "Okay." I nodded, and she continued, "First of all, that girl from earlier was something known as a fallen angel. We are all known as devils. You were pierced through the chest from behind with a sort of weapon only usable by an angel or fallen angel, a light spear. You died." My hands shook as my mind came to terms with that fact, and I felt concerned stares on me, but I nodded for her to continue. "Another important thing we should get straight right now is the fact that there are other types of creatures known as dragons in the world as well. They were believed as myths of legends, but realistically, they are real. A long time ago, a war was still being fought between the leaders of the 3 main factions, God for the side of heaven, a man named Azel for the fallen angels, and the original Mau for the devils. The war was devastating for all sides, and during this legendary battle, 2 of the dragons. Actually, I should explain dragons first. There are many levels of dragons. In these levels, the dragons that occupy these levels are supposed to have nearly equal power levels. The top one consists of Big Red, a dragon of another dimension, and Off-Eyes, a dragon who stands for infinite. The second level consists of 2 other powerful dragons, and the third consists of the Dragon Kings. The top level of dragons can take on all factions at once, should they have joined forces. As it is, the second level of dragons can already each kill a god. Capital G on God. We believe you have 2 dragons inside of you, of which level I do not know, but there's a chance that they are quite powerful," Ria said, looking at me thoughtfully. The other members of the group stared also, making me uneasy. "You wouldn't be referring to D-Drake, the Crimson Dragon Emperor, and Albion, the Vanishing Dragon, are you?" I asked uneasily. The look the others gave me was all I needed, and I looked at the ground, trying to keep from throwing up. My mind could barely take all this strange new knowledge. If I'm so powerful, then why have I been so sick all my life? Wouldn't they grant me some sort of strength against being so sick? I asked. Well, you see, D-Drag and Albion are actually on a sort of vendetta against each other. Whenever they've encountered each other in the past, they've fought. During the Major War was when the vendetta was formed, and eventually the two caused enough damage that the three major factions couldn't ignore them, and sealed them, making them each become a sort of powerful sacred gear, which is something only granted to humans by an act of God. The two became Longinus, capable of creating mass destruction. The original Longinus was the spear that killed Jesus Christ. Riaz continued. This time, however, the battlefield was your body. From what I understand, the two have put aside their differences and decided to stop fighting. When this happened, many groups felt your power, including, of course, our group and the fallen angels that attacked you. Speaking of which, how am I even alive? I asked. Theoretically, you did die. However, I used something that devils use based off of the game of chess to bring you back to life to serve as my servant. Now, you are my pawn of the group, and you consumed 10 pawns, which is unheard of, being a testament to your power. A few days ago, I was the weakest, if not one of the weakest, people in the world. I said, still in bewilderment. Yes, and now, you have a chance to become the most powerful. Speaking of which, what spikes your emotion? Riaz asked suspiciously. Well, when I was sick recently, I always had these visions of people. For example, I know that your name, I said, pointing to the short girl, is Kaneko. You are a Nekomata in the, I'm going to guess Rook, of the group. Kaneko gaped in surprise, and I moved on to the blonde boy. Your name is Kiba, and you have some sort of power with, I think it was spears. No, swords. Also, I think you were the knight of the group. Again, Kiba gaped in surprise, but once again, I had already moved on. Your name is Akino. Queen of the group, you use magic or something. I think your title was something to do with thunder and lightning. Lastly, your name is Riaz, king of the group. You can destroy things, and I think your power had something to do with that, but I don't remember exactly. When I finished, all of the people were staring at me in shock and surprise, and I saw Riaz's eyes narrow before she said, yes, you are right about most of those. I'm not going to ask how you know all of that, but another thing is that in the school, we are known as the Occult Club. Oh, and one last thing. Before we can let you know anything more than we've already let you know from Faith, you have to pass a rite of passage before you can know any more, a spar against some of us, or specifically, one against any one person. The other club members stared at her as if she was crazy, but she held up her hand and they all stopped. I looked at the group and shrugged, not knowing who to challenge. Wait, but you. I wish to be the tester for the test, Kaneko said to Riaz, who I suppose was the leader of the group. Riaz and Kaneko locked eyes for a second, and I saw some sort of unspoken message go between the two before Riaz nodded, and everyone began to walk outside. I lagged, of course, and Kaneko walked beside me, not making eye contact. When we got outside, we were in the forest area again, and around a sandy sort of area. Kaneko walked across to the other side, and I stood at the other. Riaz, Akino, and Kiba all stood on the side, watching. So, how do I fight? I asked. The three watchers all sweat dropped, and I watched, wondering why. Riaz was the first to recover, and said, well then, try to spike your emotion and summon a gauntlet on one of your arms. Evidently, one dragon is on each side of you, so on one of them at least, a gauntlet should appear. I nodded, and thought for a moment on what spiked my emotions. Thinking earlier to my conversation with Riaz, I thought that if I could defeat one of the people from my visions, no doubt I would come closer to being able to meet some more of the people from my visions. Using this, I held my arms in an X near my chest, before bringing them out and pointing both arms at Kaneko, who was in a defensive stance, her emotion unreadable. Gah! I shouted, and on my arms slowly formed two things. On my left arm formed a red sort of armor covering over my hand, the fingertips claws. There was also a green gem on the back of my hand, and I could see a slight glow as an insignia glowed red. On my right arm formed a white version of the one on my left, just unlike the red one, which went almost a fourth of the way to my elbow. This one barely went past my wrist. Also, I felt something come out of my back and break the school uniform on my back. I turned to my back to see two pure white wings, and winced a bit as my head throbbed. I slowly forced my left arm's power into my back also, and sighed in relief when the wings slowly turned gray, then a bit red. All of the club members stared in shock except Ryabuchu, who merely raised an eyebrow. I turned my sights to Kaneko, who was still in her stance. What do I do now? I asked Buchu, since even though I felt stronger, I knew it was most likely a small boost. Concentrate. Your left side raises your power by shouting boost, while your left side can take power and add it to your own. It'll be easier to boost than to divide, of course, and boosting gives more than dividing, Buchu stated, and I nodded back. Alright then, let's try this, boost. I shouted once, and I heard a robotic voice repeat boost before I felt my power surge. I stared at my red gauntlet, which was glowing red and had a brighter insignia on it. Boost, I repeated, raising my red gauntlet high above my head. I panted a bit, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of power I was now releasing. In a sudden impulse, I flung myself at Kaneko, and was shocked when she managed to hold her ground against me as we struggled, our hands gripping each other as we tried to force each other back. I was even more shocked, however, when I realized that Kaneko wasn't even breathing hard, which was impossible, as someone of her size couldn't hold so much strength. Try using divine dividing also. But you shouted from the side. I nodded, and focused strength into my right hand, which was still gripping hers. Divide. I shouted once. I saw Kaneko gasp a bit when a white after image of her faded and compressed, before shooting into me. I let out a breath of air as I felt the sheer amount of power I took from Kaneko flow into me, before some shot out the back of my wings. Suddenly, Kaneko's push weakened, and mine grew stronger. I pushed her back, making her stumble a few feet before regaining her balance and stance. Together, we looked at Butchu, to see what to do now. Issei-san, now that you've used both of your sacred gear, test it out. Punch her, Kaneko, defense only. Don't dodge, Butchu said to us. I stared at her for a moment, wondering if she wanted me to kill Kaneko, before shrugging and shifting my weight to my knees and spreading my feet apart a bit, horizontally. Now, with my gauntlets at my hips, I faced Kaneko in what can only be described as a ready horse stance. I charged, hands up and defending my mid-area, before I reached Kaneko and punched first with my right gauntlet. When I made contact to her blocking arm, I felt a small amount of shock at her strength again. It felt like punching a wall. Before she could recover, I shifted my weight a bit and used my left arm, punching under her guard at her stomach, hitting so hard a bit of dust formed the perfect circle where I hit. This entire time, I was looking into Kaneko's eyes, and when I hit her first directly at her arm, she looked surprised. But now, in the split second we matched eyes, I saw in her eyes something I wouldn't forget for a long time. Fear. Kaneko flew 20 feet backwards into a tree, completely destroying the tree before hitting the one behind it and stopping, falling to the ground in a slump. The thick, 10-foot diameter tree trunk was cracked. Rias, Kaneko, Kiba and Akino were all gathered around a table in the main room of the building. Issei had been told to wait in the main room as the main club members discussed his performance and such. Moments ago, Rias had talked with her older brother, who, along with the other leaders of the 3 divisions, had been monitoring and discussing the new dual dragon wielder. He had been worried for Ria's safety, although she assured him she was fine. Kaneko had a bruise on her stomach and a smaller one on her arm from the spar. Naturally, Issei had apologized after punching Kaneko, who was in shock and pain from actually being hurt by a fresh devil, and a pawn at that. However, she assured him she was fine, although was slightly wary of him now. With that in mind, Rias informed the group of what she had spoken to her brother about. Alright then. Apparently, the scientists studying the new boy said that while Albion and D-Drag were fighting within Issei-san, they unleashed tons and tons of power as they fought to be the stronger and more potent sacred gear. However, this power they used did not simply vanish. Instead, as their powers were buried in Issei-san's, they were gradually absorbed by Issei-san, making much of the power that the 2 dragons possessed before they were turned into sacred gear become a part of Issei-san himself. Now this alone creates more issues. One of the prime issues being that the 2 dragons' energies are still being bled out of their bodies, gradually powering Issei-san's body and his sacred gear. Because of this bleeding, there is a large chance that in the future, the sacred gear will be unable to carry on, and Issei-san will become the last wielder of the 2 sacred gears. Another issue of this is that the 2 dragons' powers most likely will increase his life by 10-fold, or even more. It's likely in the future that he himself will become a representation of the dragons on Earth, and that he will become nearly immortal unless killed. Naturally, many other powers including those of Norse and Chinese are becoming quite a bit irritated, but we can't do much about that. Moving on, Issei-san will of course eventually absorb all of the dragon's powers minus enough for them to still have their own conscience, making him as strong as the 2 of them combined. I did a small checkup on the magical confliction on his body thus far, and unfortunately, it seems that even though the 2 dragons are now at peace with one another, it seems that for now, Issei-san may not be able to use both sacred gear at once, this time as an exception as it was his first time, and much of the stored energy was sparked to life because of this. At the rate in which he is absorbing the 2 dragons' powers, he will be able to be as strong as one of them in its natural, unsealed state within a year. Rias stated, dropping the big bombshell last. The 3 other club members' eyes widened as they looked as Rias then shared glances, and Akino was the one that spoke. In that case, how long before he surpasses us? At our current levels, considering if our power levels simply stayed what it currently is, I would say that he would, without training mind, have more demonic energy and strength than Kaneko-san in 2 months. 2.5 for Yuguro-san, 4 months to surpass Akino-san, and lastly, only 5 months to surpass me as well. That's insane, Kaneko stated, eyes open in awe. Putting that aside for now, Kaneko-san, Yuguro-san. Battle report, Rias stated. The amount of sheer strength he put into that hit was incredible. Before he used divine dividing to take some of my power and only had boosted gear active, he was close to maybe half my power in pure strength. However, when he punched me later, my arm felt like it was hit with a metal beam, and the punch to my stomach felt like a wrecking ball, Kaneko assessed, wincing as she felt her ribs and stomach a bit. His form was better than to be expected, much better. It's strange, but he executed his attack to perfection, at least, the 1-2 punch. I noticed that he wasn't the slightest bit fazed that Kaneko blocked his initial attack, that would have hit her right below the neck, and quickly used his available hand to attack her under her guard. Much better than I expected, Kiba added. Also, if I may butt you, the amount of demonic energy concentrated into that attack, as well as how he concentrated his energy into that attack took skill, much more skill than he should have had with demonic energy. Had I not known that he'd just started, I would have easily assumed he'd been in multiple raiding games before. Aquino finalized. This is unprecedented. In any circumstance, we should train more now to try to keep up with this new devil. Let's go. We promised him more information if he defeated one of us. Although Kaneko-san didn't exactly fight back, he still did transcend our expectations of him. I think we should tell him more about us. First person. While the other club members talked, I stayed in the main room and started to talk to the two beings residing within me. As the dragon of growing power, I practically represent and rule over the areas of making things larger and not just power. For example, if you concentrate my energies, it's possible to create a space matter manipulation spell to make that apple larger. As it's a simple object, and a biological one at that, it should be rather easy. Just channel my strength into it, and make it grow, D-Drag told me, and I nodded gently, picking up an apple from the desk and slowly concentrating magic into it with my left hand. The apple and my hand both glowed red a bit, before the apple doubled in size slowly, before my very eyes. Contrary to the popular belief, my power doesn't only divide powers and sizes. Unlike D-Drag, who can only make things larger, I can actually cut things as well. For example, with the apple, just concentrate power into one of your fingers and use it like a blade. Since cutting and dividing is my specialty, it should be easy for you, Albion told me, and I nodded again, this time gripping the oversized apple with my left hand and concentrating some power into my right index finger. A small spike of white energy surged from my finger before it calmed down, and I used the finger to slowly cut through the apple. Then I repeated till there were 8 large pieces. Funny, it seems the two of your powers together also makes a good chef of sorts. I wonder what would happen if I opened a deli using your powers, I said aloud, and I could almost imagine the dragon's sweat dropping. I began to eat the large apple slices, and this is how Kaneko found me when she came over from the small impromptu meeting. I immediately stood, intent on apologizing. Save it, you pack a mean punch, but I've taken worse, she said before I could react. I hesitantly sat down, offering her half of the apples. She raised an eyebrow at the size of the apples, but took the apple slices I gave her and sat down on the other side of the couch. So, are you all right? I asked hesitantly. I'm fine, like I said, I've taken worse and lived. Besides, as devils, we heal at a faster rate than humans, Kaneko assured me, lifting her shirt a bit to show a receding bruise. Ah, that's good I suppose, I said. It was really uncomfortable being near her for some reason. So, I need to ask you about something, Kaneko said to me, before biting an apple slice. Yes, how do you know my species? She phrased carefully, as if trying to hold a secret. I honestly don't know, I'm sorry. But at the same time, apparently I hold 2 dragons inside of me. We're all devils, is a demon cat really a bad thing? I asked, using my common sense. I suppose not, Kaneko replied, still being wary of me. You're really cute, you know, I said, then blushed and cursed myself for speaking without thinking. I turned my head and so didn't see her reaction, but it was probably a bad one. Thanks, that means a lot to me, Kaneko said flatly as she got up and walked away. I couldn't tell if she was being sarcastic or serious. One thing though, before the others brief you, Kaneko said, stopping as she walked away. Why yes, I said. Where did you learn to fight? She asked slowly, cautious. Well, I had a lot of time on my hands while I was sick to use my mind and theorize a bit, at least, before I started having weird flashes, and so one of the things that came up was martial arts. But you couldn't have practiced while sick, she said. I know, but with the time that I was sick, I thought so much about random things that theory just came easier, and I think maybe the 2 dragons helped a bit, as now doing something from my theories is a bit natural, if that makes any sense at all. I said, I suppose so. In any case, come on, it's time to talk to the others. Issei sat uneasily on the couch. Finally, he would be completely briefed on the real world, the one with mystical creatures, devils, demons, gods and angels. He couldn't wait. Yet at the same time, he had a small feeling he wasn't taking this whole, actual world thing as bad as he should have. After all, it was only his 2nd or 3rd day being actually able to go where he wished, and have fun and all that. Meanwhile, as he sat down uneasily, the other 4 members of the occult club were also a bit uneasy, as they all sat in seemingly random positions from the 4 couches. Ria's being directly across from him, Aquino waiting on her and both Kiba and Kaneko sitting on Issei's right. The sun was fading rapidly, and it would soon be night time, and it would be Sunday, the day of the angels. Rias winced a bit as she realized what day it would be. Sunday, the day of the angels, was a day in which devils were weaker than most, and she could already feel her energy pools being sapped of their energy, simply to protect from the holy aura that always pressed down on Sundays. All around her, she could feel the white aura, even though they were in a devil's sanctuary. She actually felt her Night Queen and Rook's energies die down a bit, before feeling and assessing Issei's. No surprise there. There wasn't much of a decrease, if at all. It seemed that while D-Drag was more aligned towards the devils after ages of use, Albion still leaned more towards the angel's power, explaining the wings and color of the gauntlet. Alright then, first things first. Issei, there are many things that you should know about our world. Rias began. Issei nodded for her to continue. Where would you like me to start? Mythical beings, gods, leaders, powers, history. She prompted. I think mythical beings, Issei said quietly. Rias nodded and prepared to give a long lecture. The field of mythical beings is so large and broad that, well, it would take a few days at least for me to explain it all. Now really, I could create another dimension, one separate from time, and use that as a place for us to sleep, but that would take a lot of energy to power, and would most likely leave me unconscious. So I'll just give you an overview. All things that you have read about, at least most of them, are real. Dragons, obviously, vampires, griffins, pegasi, nekomata, Kaneko winced, bat creatures, zombies to a certain extent, everything. You name it, most likely it's out there somewhere. That's pretty much all you need to know about mythical creatures for now. You could always ask your dragons as well, I'm sure they know creatures that none of us know about. Rias commented, and Issei nodded. Then in that case, could you explain the leaders, maybe? And a bit more in depth, Issei asked. Of course, Rias said, a bit taken aback by how much he wanted to know. There are 3 main factions that we are really involved with. They revolve around Christianity and are the devils, angels, and fallen angels. There are 4 leaders of the devils, including my brother. Issei's eyes widened, and a few other people you wouldn't really know. He frowned. The fallen angels are under Azazel and the actually angels are under God himself. Capital G right, Issei said slowly. Now then, I'll give you a slight overview of the history portion as well, so you can understand more about the 3 factions. Ages ago, before any of us were alive, a great war happened between the devils and angels. All of the angels, fallen and normal, fought with the devils in a 3-way battle. Many strong families of devils were killed, and very few survived, including my family, the Gremmaries. The war began when devils, who still lived on the earth, created demonic swords and waged war against heaven. Neither the fallen angels nor the devils had been cast to hell yet. None of the 3 really won, and instead, the 3 sides actually joined forces once to fight and defeat the 2 heavenly dragons residing within you, Issei. The only 2 dragons of the 2nd highest pillar were dragons, only below the Great Red and Off-Ice. First person. So you guys aren't unstoppable, I muttered, and I felt and heard complaints in my mind and hands. Stuff it, kid. We were already weakened by each other by the time the 3 stepped in, and for the record, we actually managed to kill. I don't think it'd be wise to tell him just yet, D-Drag. Perhaps another time. In any case, we can communicate all the information you need if you ask about it. After all, we know far more than this princess you are speaking to, Albion commented. Princess, I asked aloud, and for a brief second, I saw surprise in Butchu's eyes before they hardened. Ah yes, I probably should have explained that. I am the daughter of the head of the family, and thus, you could call me the Gremmery Princess, I suppose, she said a bit roughly. Sorry about that, I was just talking to the 2 dragons. On second thought, do I have to go through all this information? The 2 told me that if I wanted to, I could ask them anything, since they know more than you do. I said, of course. However, one thing you should know that they most certainly do not is that you are to show me respect, Issei. You are my pawn, one of my soldiers, and I do not appreciate insubordination, so when you want to say or ask something, ask politely, Rias said to me, her eyes flashing with irritation. The other 3 gave each other strange, surprised looks. I shrunk back a bit, surprised at her anger. Perhaps I'd crossed a line. Or perhaps she was a bit touchy today. In any case, I quickly shut up as Butchu took deep breaths trying to calm down. In any case, Issei, there is something you need to know. The power surge you had when you fought Kaneko was dangerous. Your body can't safely be at that level right now, and so you have to go through physical conditioning first. Really? I asked, surprised. Butchu nodded. Yes, you have to, otherwise your body might rip you from the inside out from the amount of power you channel. I wouldn't be surprised if you ripped your own muscles next time you try to use both Longinus at the same time. Then, what can I do? I asked, bewildered. Well, there are many things you could do. First and foremost, you could simply let me or one of the others lock away your power for a bit, and place you under limiters so you have a better grasp of your power. You should know though, that if you do this, one of your Longinus will be hard to use for a while. What's a Longinus? I asked, and Butchu looked surprised. Oh, have I not told you about that? Longinus are divine weapons, far more powerful than any normal gear. The original was the spear that killed Jesus Christ, and they all have the power to kill a god. Oh, I said meekly. She chuckled a bit. But yes, as I was saying, you could have one of us seal it up a bit. It wouldn't be safe for any of us for your power to be wild and rampage randomly. Next, we could always let you still be in control of all of your power and see how it plays out. Who knows, you might be a descendant of some great family that can control their bodies at will, Butchu said, chuckling. I gulped nervously. There are more solutions, really, but none of them will be as effective as sealing your power momentarily. It isn't as if you're losing it forever, it'll just be sealed for a while, Butchu commented offhandedly. I listened for a moment as the 2 dragons within me discussed a bit. Well, I don't really like their idea as much, but Albion and D-Drag said that I could always have my power. I paused. I didn't remember all of what the 2 had said. D-Drag spoke aloud from my hand. Albion responded in the other. Albion added, directing it to Butchu. She nodded, and the group leaned in a bit to listen. We recommended, together, that Issei shouldn't seal his power up. Rather, if one of you were willing to help, he could learn to circulate the power throughout his body non-stop. So rather than being concentrated at certain points like now, it would instead be funneled throughout his body. Drake stated. Albion added. That's a very complex procedure to learn though. Riaz began, putting her hand on her chin as she thought, turning towards Aquino for help. It is possible for him to learn that technique. However, he would have to be very good at control and attune with his magic. The energy constantly being transferred into magic energy. You would need to expel the magic often, Aquino assessed. Magic? I asked, eyes narrowed. The group nodded slowly. As you already know, our queen can already summon lightning bolts and often, fire, Kiba added respectfully. So basically, I have to summon fire or something every once a while for this tactic to work. I questioned slowly. The group nodded. It's only till your body becomes strong enough to deal with this power surge of yours. When that happens, you don't have to circulate the energy anymore. Albion, Drake, is this really the best option? I asked slowly, lifting my hands. I heard them affirm it in my mind. However, it might be easier if you were to have a familiar. But you said slowly. The others nodded slowly. What's a familiar? I asked, feeling dumb again. A familiar is basically a sort of spirit that you make a contract with, and it becomes a sort of partner for you. Being that strong creatures are naturally attracted towards dragons, it shouldn't be too hard to find a familiar for you, Issei, but you told me. I nodded again and looked down at my hands for advice. The next time our group is allowed to capture or bond a spirit to one of our group is soon. Actually, Aquino said as she placed her hands out and a small scroll appeared. Her eyes lit up suddenly. Actually, we can go right now, if you'd like, she said sweetly. I raised an eyebrow and turned to Butchu, who nodded solemnly. All right then, let's go, I said slowly, looking to the others to see their reactions. None of them showed much, and I felt they were still a bit untrusting of me, especially since I already knew all of their abilities. Butchu transported us via magic circle, and I was still fascinated by its power. The very ground turned red as we disappeared, and the first thing I felt when I could see again was trees. Dead, old trees. I turned to ask where we were and found nobody with me. Hello. Anybody there? Butchu? I asked slowly, looking around. There were only trees, dead ones at that, and the moon shined brightly. Strange. It wasn't even night yet. I turned to the sound of a voice. So, another of my kind, eh? The voice said. I could just barely make it out, as if the voice was coming from right behind me. I turned multiple times, trying to find the source. Who's there? I asked, shifting into a ready position. Drake, Albion, who is that? I asked again. No response. I presume you are here to challenge me. Very well, I shall send my own son to guide you to me. Do not disappoint, I heard, and suddenly, everything went bright again as we appeared in the very forest I had previously been in, only this time, the others were there. Something went wrong in the transport. But you said suddenly, and all of us stood there silently. Does anyone know? I can't seem to locate the specific person whose transport over here was disrupted. But you added, turning to each of us slowly. We locked eyes, and I turned away, not really wanting to tell them. Don't get me wrong, I like these devils. They all seemed rather nice and trustworthy, as well as polite and accepting. However, none of my devil peers seemed to like me, or at least, they seemed to fear me too much, leading to mistrust. I liked them, but I wasn't willing to try and form a relationship with people that are so untrusting of me, just because I can do a few things they can't. Issei, do you know of any reason why I may have felt a disturbance? But you know, Riaz asked. I shook my head and responded obediently. She frowned at me, and everybody began to walk forward. I was idle in thought as Riaz called for someone. Drake began. I nodded mentally. Albion added sadly. I sighed wistfully, fiddling around with my clothes. I looked up to see a flash of light appear as a strange, straggly-looking man appeared out of nowhere, leaning on a tree. At his side hung weird things, and he had a bit of a crazy gleam in his eye. Gremory-san, what brings you here? The man asked Riaz, still leaning on the tree. We are here to find a familiar for my new pawn. Preferably something that won't destroy dimensions, Riaz added sarcastically. I grimaced. Speaking of which, what was that? I asked mentally. Albion replied, trailing off. Great, you mean that was a real-life dragon? It said it would send its own son to guide me. I thought back. There are a number of amazing familiars you could have, new pawn. Why, do you know of any mythical creature that you would find particularly interesting? The strange man asked me. I snapped out of my thoughts and put on a contemplative face, before looking up to him and saying very firmly, dragons. He laughed nervously. Well, of course. There are many types of creatures around here, although I suppose dragons would be some of the more powerful ones, Mr. Boosted Divine Gear. How about something a tad more easier to control? While dragons are powerful, and in your case, can be friendly, the only type of dragon that a young aspiring devil can really even try to bond with would probably be a baby spirite dragon. You know, the children of the big, wild dragons that are already fully mature and impossible to control. I bent double and clenched my head and stomach as he finished, drawing attention from the others. How are his magic systems? Riaz asked. Akino leaned down towards me and I saw green as she assessed me. Not good, he really needs to get rid of some excess magic soon, otherwise. Akino trailed off. You. I growled a bit, clenching my teeth from the pain in my stomach and head. The man snapped a bit to attention from his previous bewildered state. Yes, he asked. The strongest creature in your grounds. Where is it? I asked, my voice still a bit of a growl as I clenched my entire body from the pain. I couldn't look up, but I could easily imagine his surprise. Why you? Gremory-san, what is this kid? Suicidal. The Thunder Cry Dragon is the only one within my grounds but to challenge it. He muttered uneasily. I heard him say the type and I snapped up. Where? I asked. He looked at me carefully before exchanging a look with Rias. North of here, only a few hundred meters, really. But you can only find the place if you have a guide, like, for example, the man began, before I felt a weight on my shoulder. I looked to see a small, cute dragon with a bluish head and large eyes, shivering a bit as it breathed a bit of yellow fire out. An invitation from the dragon himself, but how? That is its son, so, the man said again, pointing and obviously in shock. D-Drag, Albion, any reason this guy might want to see me? I asked aloud. He may wish to see you out of curiosity, he may wish to see you to challenge you. I personally have no idea, but our species respects strength. I say you go, you won't have a chance like this again. Go for it. If he tries something, activate our sacred gears. He won't stand a chance, and besides, if you let out a lot of energy now, you won't feel stressed later. With all due respect, Heavenly Dragons Albion and D-Drag, I don't think Issei is ready for this. Rias tried to butt in. She looked desperately to her other members as red and white aura began to flash from me, the blue spirite dragon on my shoulder flapping a bit. Akino-senpai, I shouted. She turned her gaze to me. Yes, how do you fire a firebolt, exactly? I asked. She tilted her head a bit. With any magic, she finally began, you simply call forth the energy from within yourself, and you can feel your energy as it leaves you into another space before you use it in an attack. The more sharp it is, the more likely it is either lightning or metal you are creating. The hotter it feels, the more likely it is lightning or fire, she told me coolly. I flashed her a grin. Thanks, Akino-senpai, I shouted, before forcing as much of the energy into my legs as I could before jumping off. I heard gasps and saw expressions of shock as I bounded forward at an incredibly fast pace towards the dragon's lair. The little baby on my shoulder would nudge me occasionally to help me with direction, before I arrived to a large rock with an insignia that resembled the one that I once saw on the Red Gauntlet. The baby dragon flew off my shoulder, and from his mouth came a huge blast of lightning, which lit up the insignia, and the ground began to shudder and move as the earth parted. I looked behind me and sighed, realizing with a start that if this dragon had any evil intent at me, it might be the last time I would see the sky. The first thing that I saw was darkness. The air felt humid, and when I breathed in through my nostrils, I could smell a strange scent in the air, as if I was going to a friend's house. I felt around a bit and felt large, mossy walls on either side of me. The open entrance behind me provided no light, and I was about to despair before the tiny dragon on my shoulder blew some flame. In an instant, the sides of the corridor lit up, the flame igniting several rows of torches leading down. The corridor turned ahead, and beyond that, it continued endlessly. I nodded to the tiny dragon, which was now curled up on my shoulder, somehow not falling off, and napping. I breathed in anticipation as I walked forward, examining the walls closely. Down on the ground I saw a pile of bones. Surprised, I jumped back a bit, realizing that someone had died at that spot, and had stayed there, dead. Looking around, I saw even more places where people had died, and some even looked recent. The original one I saw was completely charred, as were those near it. Further down, I saw a reflection of fire, and deduced that there were blades ahead. Next to a pile of bones were small holes on the bottom, almost unnoticeable to anybody not paying close attention. I backed up, panic beginning to envelop my brain as I realized how far down the rabbit hole I was. I didn't want to die again in this small, underground, airtight hole. I turned to the entrance and was about to run out towards the open air when I heard voices in my mind. Calm down, partner. As fellow dragons, we could always help you with this task, D-Drag offered. Those dead are fools. The ones that actually had a chance are near the dragon himself, now onward. We can help you, should you even need it. Look, you should already notice the correct path, Albion scolded. I took a deep breath and examined the area, grabbing one of the tiny pebbles on the ground. I threw it onto the area with small holes and surprised nothing happened. I was about to go towards that direction when I noticed a few bones on the ground near the holes. Fool, those traps are obviously pressure sensitive. A mouse or small rock wouldn't be able to set them off, Albion said bluntly. I stopped and thought for a bit, getting nothing. Look on the ground. Notice the things that aren't traps, like those seeds right there, D-Drag offered. Now that he mentioned it, I did notice tiny seeds. They looked like apple seeds, Albion asked. I grinned and concentrated D-Drag's power on them, and one grew and grew till it was too heavy to hold, and I flung it at the holes. As it hit the ground, countless spears and spikes shredded it to pieces, startling me. Oh okay, evidently that's not the path to go, I muttered. I picked up a large number of the seeds, as many as I could find, and stuffed them into my pocket. The challenge was over before I knew it. After using my trick of seeds, the traps were all set off in a controlled way, and I managed to go on the right path, using nearly all of the seeds in the end. Finally, I saw a larger opening and walked slowly through, blue flames lighting the room. "So, you managed to get past the traps. Good job, half-breed," a voice sneered. I turned around again and again as I walked along the side of the room, trying to avoid getting ambushed. "You are smart. However, that alone will not save you," the voice continued, and I heard I cracked down at my feet. I looked down to see a pile of bones, my shoe snapping a rather large one. I gulped nervously, consulting my two partners. "Albion, D-Drag, what do I do?" I whispered frantically. No reply. "In my realm my power is absolute. Not even those of the heavenly dragons have any influence whatsoever. Face it, child, you are doomed." I shook my head. "While I will die someday, that day shall not be today." "Show yourself," I commanded in a voice much more confident than my emotions. I heard a shaking sound that I eventually realized was laughter. Such spunk for someone who just started to be able to walk straight. The voice continued. I narrowed my eyes. "How do you know that?" I asked. I began storing energy into what Aquino had explained to me earlier. I could feel the energy begin to become hard to contain, yet I still poured my anger and frustration into it, fueling the energy. I saw a red and white hue come off of me as I powered up, before deciding to do something else with some remaining energy. I pooled the energy slowly into my hands, where the gems of my longinus were, and a bit on my back as well, where my wings were. "I know many things, child. While I am not quite as old as your partners, I am far older than your group's leader, Rias Gremory. You stand no chance," the voice said, and the darkness that had barely existed before faded completely as the room came into view, and I saw my enemy. Without hesitation, I thrusted both of my hands forward, pointed at the target. A small magic circle appeared and levitated in front of my hands, and I shifted my body as I put as much momentum as I could into myself before stepping forward and punching the magic circle with all my strength. An enormous ball of fire came out of the circle, a fireball easily the size of a house. Even then, the dragon was slightly bigger than it, and managed to block with its forearms, creating a huge blow of smoke as the fireball impacted, creating a huge explosion. I activated my two hands simultaneously, my school uniform once again being ripped in the back as obnoxiously white angel's wings appeared on my back, flapping a bit as I got air. They were bigger than before, and I could now already control them, whereas when I sparred with Kaneko, I couldn't. My red gauntlet had grown as well, and now, claws were visible on the end, whereas before I didn't have any place for my fingers. The length now easily went up past my elbow, and the red scale on top now actually was more layered, having higher levels in the front, sliding back. From the sides of the gauntlet were now yellow spikes, 2 yellow spikes going back on either side, a second crystal being partly hidden by the layering scales. My white gauntlet now almost went up to my elbow, and while boosted gear had more of a scaly look, divine dividing was more sleek, multiple blue horns going back, a few extending from the base all the way to the edge of the longinus. I could feel my power emanating from myself as I pondered a bit. I wonder why Rias didn't want me to use them at once. She probably didn't want me to be powerful, didn't she? Why can't they see I'm stronger than they think, and they can trust me? I would never betray them, even if I didn't like them, I thought as I stared at my gauntlets, before turning to the huge column of smoke. I flapped my wings a few times, before simply floating in the air a bit. Across from me, the huge mass of smoke was fading, and I concentrated my power again, focusing it into the palm of my hand. All this time as I thought, I mentally counted down as my boosted gear had been active the entire time, and so I was now nearly to my limit. "So, I think about 4 boosts have passed," I muttered, as another boost passed and I felt my aura surge. I breathed deeply, trying to get some control under my powers. From what I remembered, the 2 longinus only worked while they were in contact with what they had to affect, so if I wanted to use divine dividing on the dragon, I'd have to get close and touch it. Not happening. I wouldn't be able to get close to that beast without being fried, most likely. I thought for a moment, and noted that above us, the little baby dragon from earlier was circling, watching us. Strange, I hadn't noticed it leave my shoulder. The smoke separated simultaneously, so fast that I nearly lost control of my magic sphere that was forming. As the smoke cleared, I finally got to see what the dragon looked like. It was the size of a small house, easy. Its body was a base color of blue, yellow lightning streaks running throughout, most connecting up with its eyes, which were pale blue. It had horns that streaked back as well, much like its son, and its wings were folded, but he spread them, and they were bat-like, showing grips and veins. The dragon was badly singed, its right wing not even operating properly, and its skin burned badly. It turned its hateful gaze to me. "Bastard, for that blow, I will take out your organs, and just give you enough energy to live and twist in agony. Now die," it said, blowing flames at me. I quickly swerved to the left with my wings, and cursed when I crashed straight into a random pillar that had appeared in the room. I fell down, dazed from conking into the pillar, and watched as the dragon began to walk towards me, scowling. "Runt," the dragon scoffed, bringing a claw towards me. At the last possible second, I punched the magic sphere, and this time, a large red and white streaked blast burned through the dragon's right and left wings. The dragon howled in pain, and nearly crushed me. As it was, had I not boosted earlier, I surely would have been crushed right away. so I stood, arms up as I tried to stop the dragon from crushing me. Bastard! The dragon roared, and I felt the air thin and heat begin to grow as the dragon charged up some fire. I grunted, before channeling some power, as it seemed neither one of us would be moving anytime soon. Divide! I shouted, and the dragon was coated in a white aura before this aura shot towards me, empowering me. I gasped as I felt the intensity even a portion of the creature's aura contained, and some even was expelled out my wings, which were now glowing brightly. What the dragon asked, as I pushed it back. Because of my power gain and its power loss, the dragon toppled right away, landing on its injured wings. It roared in agony as it tried to get up, but, using a quick amount of magic, I tried to blast fire at its limbs unsuccessfully. Runt, you think you've won this? I'll show you. I'll show you the power of the Thundercree dragons. The dragon roared at me before getting up shakily. It looked like a good breeze could knock it over. The dragon can't fly anymore, I thought, and I flew straight up, nearing the ceiling of the giant underground chamber. I could see the dragon's expression as it sneered, and raised an eyebrow before feeling pain, unimaginable pain. It felt as if someone had begun to skin me alive. I closed my eyes from the pain, and felt myself falling down, eventually falling at a quicker pace. I nearly hit the ground when I felt gentle hands stop my descent, carrying me slowly down as I was set down. My wing felt busted, and I was sure my entire body was burned. I tried to move a bit, but felt a spasm of pain from doing so. Despite the pain, I slowly opened my eyes to see who my savior was. The first thing I saw was legs, pale white and smooth. My eyes trailed up as I saw a white blouse, smoothened and pale white smooth arms up as well. Golden curly locks trailed the person's back, between a single quartet of pure white angel wings. I could just barely make out the side of the person's face, and saw a determined face, with pretty facial features. In front of her was a bright white light, a halo was on her head, and she smiled when she saw me staring. I blacked out, was so tempted to end it here. I dreamed of angels. All around me, there were white lights, and yet I could just barely note out small things. There were people around me, that part I'm sure of. They liked me, and all of them smiled at me as I wandered around them. Before me stood a man, 12 golden wings spanning from his back. He's telling me something. I'm sure of it. I can see his mouth move, and people around me as well. He's smiling now, clapping and motioning with his hand. Oh, he wants me to go with him to meet someone. I walk with him. There isn't much change for a while as we walk. I feel peaceful, at ease. People greet us, many respectfully bowing, not only to this man, but to me as well. Have I saved them from something? We arrived at the place he wanted us to be. He calls out a name. Again, I can't hear him, only see his mouth move, but I remain silent and respectful. A woman appears, with golden curly locks. She is beautiful in a natural way, as if she could stumble out of bed in that appearance. I bow deeply to her, but she merely chuckles a bit. We turn to the man. He laughs as well. Soon, all three of us are bursting in joyful, peaceful laughter. Before I can do anything to react, the woman leans over and gives me a chaste kiss on the cheek. I blush, and feel the area her soft lips touched my cheek. She blushes a bit, and a slight black aura runs through her, before disappearing. The man seems to scold her, and she shrugs it off. I have to leave. I frown a bit, then smile at some unknown happiness, before waving the two goodbye. They frown as well, but wave me goodbye as well. I shake hands with the man, and the woman gives me a gentle kiss on the forehead, before muttering something. This time no black aura appears, and I bow, before the dream goes dark. Again, tempting. I awoke with a start. There wasn't a dragon anymore. There wasn't a woman dressed in white with wings. I was at home, in my bed. I sat up in bed, looking at my hands for a few moments. I try to contact Drake and Albion, but nothing happens. A dream? No, definitely not. I can still feel injuries from the lightning that the dragon in the cave had used on me. It hadn't been a dream. My mother walks in. How are you, son? She asks. I respond with an I'm good, but she doesn't seem satisfied. I let you go out on your own for 2 days, and this happens. Forget it. You're staying with me for a while longer, a few more years at least, before you go on your own to anything, my mom tells me, and I stare at her, face full of shock. What do you mean? I ask, trying to get up. She forces me back into bed, tucking me in. Seriously, we leave you alone for how long? A few days, and you go around, getting killed, resurrected into a devil of all things. I thought we'd taught you better than this, Issei, my mom said. Strange, her tone of voice sounded very different than usual. And now you're a devil. Angels mortal enemies. You don't understand, do you? I wanted to introduce you to Michael and Gabriel and all the other angels. Now you can't, do you understand? When you die, you'll go to the underworld. You won't be able to meet your real parents, my mom said. Wait. What? I asked in a daze. Your real parents are in heaven, Issei. You won't be able to meet them now. My mom told me. Heaven. Then who are? I asked uneasily. The woman I always thought of as my mom grinned. A messenger. For now, your father and I must leave. Don't worry, you won't know about this memory till you know enough. Bye, the woman said, putting a hand over my head. I tried to struggle, but couldn't. I was still too weak. I woke up in the forest, the dragon across from me. Strange, that dream. It happened again. Yet it didn't feel like a dream, it felt a lot more like a memory. I was slouched against a rock wall, and the room was lit up by a single source of light. A woman. On my lap landed the little dragon from earlier, and I pet it, scratching it behind its ears. I stood up, baffled by this gorgeous woman that stood across from me. In front of her, in a similar position to the one I had been, was the dragon I fought earlier, and he looked worse for wear. A huge light spear was pierced through his side, and despite the fact of how we fought earlier, I winced in sympathy. I took a light spear through the heart once, after all. It hurt. The woman's back was still to me, now 10 full wings were showing, all pure white. She seemed to be pondering something as she gripped a huge spear fashioned by light as she faced the dragon. Shall I kill it? What would Michael think? Dragons don't necessarily fall into the category of evil creatures too easily. But the heavenly dragons were the ones that killed. The woman trailed off, her expression darkening. I walked 2 steps and collapsed abruptly on the ground, clutching my chest. An image flashed through my mind. A woman with immense power radiating off of her, 100 light spears raised above her. Holding in her hand, she had a small metal thing as she ran across a line. I groaned and kneeled uneasily, holding my chest. "Oh dear, are you hurt, Devil-san?" she asked me. I shook my head a bit, worried about her knowing my species. "Don't worry, I'll heal you if you have any damage. I am an angel, after all," she said, and a huge number of her light spears began to move. I nearly panicked before the spears flew towards the downed dragon, hovering above it. She turned towards me with a pitying look, kneeling down and saying, "Lie down," to me. I was too exhausted to reject, and lay down, my head nearly hitting the rock wall behind me. Whoa now. "Easy there, child," the angel told me, moving over to the side of me and putting her hands over my chest. I hadn't realized it earlier, but my wings were still active as well as my gauntlets, leaving me in my powered-up form. She concentrated, and I saw her hands glow white before I myself glowed white as well, and I began to feel better. Why are you helping me? A devil?" I asked, as I felt my conscience slipping. "You aren't a devil, Hayato Issei. At least, not anymore." What do you mean I'm not a devil anymore?" I asked, bolting up. I immediately felt a huge spike of pain surge into me, and I groaned, before flopping down again. "Geez, I want to explain it to you, but I think it might be better for you to see for yourself," the angel said to me, putting a finger on her chin. She gestured with a hand to a nearby rock wall, and it shimmered before an image appeared on the wall. I saw Rias in there, along with Akino, Kiba, and Kaneko, along with a man that looked like Rias, a girl in a cosplay outfit, and 2 other devils. There was also a strange-looking boy standing behind Rias that looked like a girl. "This happened yesterday," the angel said to me sternly. I nodded as the volume came on. "Can't find him. Don't you understand how much of a bargaining chip he is?" one of the men asked Rias. She looked a bit nervous, and I couldn't blame her. Even here, in a completely different place, I could feel the power of that man. "Please, colleague, forgive my younger sister. She can be irritating at times," the other man with red hair said, and Rias looked down in sadness. I felt sorry. After all, she was being chastised for me. "Please, forgive me," Rias said, making a deep bow towards all 4 devils. They all scoffed, except for the other red-haired man, whose gaze softened. "Okay, explain what happened again." We went into the forest of familiars, looking for a familiar to help balance the magic energy of the heavenly duo dragon. It was having issues with balancing out its energy and power. We didn't want it to simultaneously combust or something. After all, we had gotten it to trust us, Rias said coldly. I looked at her, shocked, and thought back to what had happened before. She had never trusted me. She had never shown me any leeway. So that's how it is. She didn't see me as a partner, or a friend, or even as a person. She saw me as a thing, an object. Rias-tan, please be more respectful to Dragon-chan. Sona-tan was rather upset that she never got to meet her pawn, the cosplay girl said, and I raised an eyebrow. Sona, even though I had only been at the school for a day or 2, I still knew the president of student council. So that was the other group of devils. My apologizes, Leviathan-sama, Rias said, bowing respectfully. So this must have been one of the 4 devils Rias told me about, along with her brother, and the other 2. Leviathan, why are you treating the dragon with such respect? He practically ran out on us, Ria's older brother said. I sighed, depressed, and I felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked up, surprised, to see the angel patting me on the shoulder comfortingly. She gave me a smile, and I nodded, looking back to the screen. Anyways, he fled from us, going into an area created by an incredibly powerful territorial dragon, capable of creating its own dimension due to its age, apparently. We never got in, but I got these back, Rias stated, holding out 8 pawn pieces. The group gasped collectively, and I saw the cosplay girl actually have a look of sympathy in her eyes. What could have killed a duo heavenly dragon? One of the men finally asked, and another replied. I think I know what happened, he said, as he held out a hand for the pawn pieces. Behind Rias, Kaneko had a small tear that slid down the side of her face, but none of the others seemed to notice, except for me. What happened, Beelzebub? Lucifer asked. His eye twitched. The dragon didn't die, he said, and everyone stared at him in shock, including me. How did he know I didn't die? These pawn pieces were forcefully ejected from his body. So forcefully, with such powerful white magic, for that matter, that I strongly suspect that an angel helped him, Beelzebub stated, and the room fell silent. The angel next to me wove her hand at the screen, and it disappeared completely. She stood, and I turned to face her. So, now that you know what has happened to you, and what has happened in the outside world, yes, she asked me. I nodded slowly, put a bit on guard. She could have easily manipulated the screen, after all. So, will you join the angel's side, heavenly duo dragon? She asked, extending a hand to me. I pondered for a moment. How do I know you didn't manipulate the screen? I asked uneasily. She smiled at me. My name, or at least, the name that humans know me as, is Gabriel. If I ever lie, a black surge goes through my wings, as we angels aren't the type to lie, heavenly duo dragon, she stated calmly. Wait, you're the Gabriel? I asked, shocked. She curtsied to me. At your service. Although, I think I should be the one saying that to you, albeit slightly modified. You are the son of them, and you contain those too. It's insane, she claimed. I stared at her. Who am I the son of? I asked quietly. I've done some thinking, and I realized from my dreams that the people that I've lived with for who knows how long aren't my real parents. Also, I know for sure it was you now. I've met you somewhere before. Where? Your parents are angels, Issei. When you fell sick, they prayed every single waking moment to every one of us. When they finally died, they were naturally elevated. We all knew them, and they are practically the only angels who aren't created by God himself, and yet have 8 wings each. Wings are a symbol of power in the angel power chain. My brother, Michael, the strongest angel, has 12 wings. I am the only one that has 10. There are 2 other angels that have 8, besides your parents. Do you understand their power now? Gabriel said to me. I stared at her, awestruck. My parents. They had prayed for me so much that they elevated. Wait, they died? I asked, eyes narrowed. She frowned. They were killed by a man whose name I cannot divulge. I'm sorry, but the good thing is that this made them go to heaven and become angels. That's the important thing, yes? She asked me. I shook my head. I want to know who killed them, I said sternly, as she knelt down and began to heal me again. And I can't and won't tell you. They'll kill you, easily, she said bluntly. I shook my head. I'm a heavenly dragon now. Speaking of which, why can't I communicate with them? I asked, raising my hand a bit. She smiled, before giving me a kiss on the head. I blushed, before noticing that it felt just like my dream when she kissed me before. She looked at me eye to eye. That dragon managed to seal off your connections. They should be waking up now. It's lucky I was here too. If I wasn't, you wouldn't be able to speak with them for a long time, most likely, Gabriel told me. I nodded and muttered my thanks. There, you should be able to stand now. Now please, consider my offer. Will you join the angels? There is no turning back, you know. You will be able to meet your parents again. And also, Gabriel said, giving me a look I didn't expect on her. A black aura flashed through one of her wings, and she shook her head. Angels are allowed to have relationships with other angels. That's how modern angels are created, unless they are elevated, of course, she said, blushing. I blushed also, after realizing what she was implying. I probably should stop with that. I heard her mutter. I stood, thinking. About time I could talk again. I'm surprised, partner. You're a human again. The angel changed you, didn't she? I heard D-Drag say. Albion chastised. Should I take it? I thought to them, and I heard contemplative sounds. The angels are quite powerful, and sending Gabriel herself down guarantees they are serious, D-Drag offered. But, all the same, the angels are the enemies of both of the other 2. They are the most hated out of all 3 factions. You would get a lot of enemies from this, Albion added. Then what? I thought back to them. Solo. Wouldn't be too bad of an idea, I suppose. After a bit of training with this faction and any training you might be able to milk out of the devils, you'll be strong enough. Oh, and bang this angel. Albion. I thought, blushing. D-Drag and Albion both laughed together, and D-Drag added. She is the most beautiful woman in heaven. Although I suppose Sona's sister would also be a good choice, cosplay girl. She's the hottest woman in hell, and she seemed to be disappointed you died. D-Drag contemplated. Shut up, damn it. I said out loud, and the 2 fell silent. Gabriel had jumped a bit in shock, and was now staring at me strangely. I sighed, before apologizing. Sorry, speaking with 2 dragons in your mind can get very irritating, I said bluntly. She nodded, and, looking bored, began to create tiny spears and drew in the rocky ground. The spears went through it like wet clay in a sharpened sword, and I sighed, before sitting down as well, crisscross applesauce. Bastards, I heard from the corner. The Thundercree dragon from earlier was still speared to the wall. Getting an idea, I stood up, before walking over to the dragon, who was still speared badly. What do you want? Punk. It snarled, but being speared to the wall, it looked as fierce as a puppy. I slowly took off the spears with my gauntlet, snapping them. I heard Gabriel turning as she watched me. Finally, all of the spears broke, and the dragon fell to the ground, no longer hanging. It gave me a weary look and rubbed its scars before muttering a thanks to me. I felt airborne immediately, and I was face to face with the dragon, which looked pissed. Now why did you save me? Answer, before I swallow you alive, runt. It bellowed, and I smiled, seeing a surprised expression. Listen, we're both dragons. Neither one of us belong to any of the 3 sides now. You and I both could use some allies, don't you think? I proposed. The dragon cocked its head and snorted, before letting me down. I looked behind me to see Gabriel, 100 light spears raised behind her, her hand raised, as she watched me get ready to speak. I smirked a bit. So she actually cared. But was it for me as an object? Or me as her friend's child? Or just for me? I half want the Dragon Albion to speak with you for me. But I think I myself will, instead, I said, straightening up as I spoke to the dragon. It raised an eyebrow, but continued listening, nodding respectfully. There are 3 factions where we live right now: angels, fallen angels, and devils. Yet none of these 3 are as powerful as the dragons if we were united. Why do you hide here? I asked, gesturing around. Immediately, the dragon scowled. Watch your words, brat, it muttered, and I smiled. That's it, I hit dead center, huh? You're scared of the others, aren't you? That's why you're shut up in this hole. I can help you, fellow dragon. We aren't meant to be trapped in holes, especially underground, especially since you have a lightning affinity, I reasoned, holding out my hands. If this clan were formed, you would be the leader, wouldn't you? The dragon asked me. I nodded slowly. You catch on quick. Yes, it was my intention to form a clan of dragons, recruiting new members throughout. For now, if you accept, you will be governor, and take control and leadership for me for now, until I become strong enough. When I do, I will take over as leader, and you will be my second, always, I offered. Its eyes widened. You would do that for me? It asked, and I nodded. I swear it, I said. Well then, sir, you have a deal, the dragon said, smiling widely. I smiled back, and raised my hand. Before we agree to anything, do you even like staying here in this hole? I mean, it is definitely safe, but do you like it? I asked. No, it muttered. If I could summon you every once a while, and let you fight, would you feel better? I'd need some confirmation, but I think I could summon you, and your power would feel like mine, so you wouldn't be hunted, I added, and the dragon's eyes lit up. Really, I would love to fight again, and be free, it said, having a dreamy look in its eyes. If you really are sure you want to do this, then I could get someone to make the contract, or I could probably make it myself, with the Dragon Albion's help. I would simply summon you in any battles that I myself couldn't handle, in exchange for your help with learning about my abilities as a dragon, and of course, your help, I said, adding something. You didn't have to try to sneak in helping you. But yes, I definitely accept, the dragon said, and I breathed out, a bit taken back by how I had just acted. I will return then, when I know how to make the contract. We'll use your cavern as a base for when we recruit more members. Until then, is it okay if your son is with me, so I can still return? I will, I swear upon my father and mother in heaven, I said, putting my hand up and my other over my heart. Of course, oh right, you don't know my name yet, do you? The dragon asked, and I flushed, realizing it. Right, what is your name? I asked. My name is Ark, the dragon said, still slumped down. Its body was still damaged in multiple places, and I turned to Gabriel, who had been watching closely. Would you please heal him? I asked, and Gabriel gave the 2 of us a wary look, before giving me a sweet look. Maybe if you were to actually join the angels already, instead of plotting with the dragon about creating a new faction. Just maybe, she said, smiling sweetly. I scratched my head and looked down, realizing that she had probably heard. Why yeah, sorry about that. Look, if you heal him fully, I'll go with you, I said calmly. She perked up at that. You'll come with me and join us, she asked. I shook my head, and her gaze darkened a bit. I won't join any factions for a few months, I guarantee you, I said, as the tiny little dragon from before flew out of nowhere and landed on my shoulder. That isn't enough, Eyes-kun, Gabriel stated, changing her tone of voice a bit. I noticed a gleam of darkness flash in her wings, and she stopped. I wouldn't fall for something that easily, Gabriel-san. Also, please refrain from falling for me. I don't want the fallen angels to get any stronger, I begged, and she pouted. Still, it isn't enough, just join the angels, it'll be much easier, she claimed, and I knew she was telling the truth, it would be easier. Easier to join another group that wouldn't understand me, just like the devils. Maybe I will, eventually. How about this then? Heal Ark, leave us in peace, give us protection from the others in case they actually find this place somehow or decide to attack. Train me, and I swear that I will put the Angels faction above the other 2, if I decide to join a faction, I said boldly. You, why would you have any reason to put fallen angels or devils ahead of us? She asked. Let me see here. Where were you all when I was born, and was constantly sick? Watching, even when my parents contacted you all every day. Where were you angels when my parents were killed? Oh no, Issei, it's better that they died. Where were you angels when I was attacked by a fallen? Oh, you know, just watching as your apparent friend's son was killed, then resurrected into his devil. There's plenty reason to not like angels right now, Angel Gabriel, I said, and her expression turned worse every statement. We aren't to interfere in human affairs. You must understand. She began, and I interrupted her. Oh sure, human affairs. Yet I don't qualify as human, do I? I'm a dragon, an incredibly powerful one at that. Wrong. You are a human containing 2 dragons. It's different. No, you're wrong. I contain 2 dragons, yes, but my power and body is all being supported by dragons now, I suspect. Thus, you all could have helped. Now that is my deal, take it or leave it, I said, hearing applause in my head from the 2 dragons, who were approving of what I was saying all the way. GR. How about this? Gabriel said, looking agitated. You'll help the church for training, and you get all that you wanted. Deal? Of course, Gabriel-san. Why would it be bad? I said, putting my hand forward. She grimaced as she thought for a moment before taking my hand. We shook, and I saw light emit from both of us as the deal was made. A few moments later, standing in front of me were 3 quadruple-winged angels, and each decked in full body armor, each also wielding a lance and huge shield. In front of them kneeled Gabrielle as she wrote some sort of contract. I was a bit wary of the amount of soldiers, I'll admit. While it wasn't as if there had been an army summoned, there were still 3 fully trained holy knights or warriors. I didn't want to take my chances with these guys, especially since next to me, still injured and trying to rest, was Ark, my new friend. The older dragon was still weary from both his battle with me and his beating given by Gabrielle, not that I could blame him. Actually, I was quite surprised he was still standing. The blasts that I had shot earlier, I could feel the power surging through them as I channeled them at him. I had no idea I had such power within myself, but at the same time, I was even more shocked that he managed to survive them. The heat contained in those blasts probably could have blasted through steel. That was a testament to Gabrielle's power as well. The few blasts capable of blasting through steel only slightly injured him, and the lucky shot later barely managed to burn through the weaker spot on his body, the flaps between his wings. As I mused about this, across from me, Gabrielle stood, her wonderful hair swaying gently. "It is done," she said calmly, handing me a parchment with a pure white feathered quill. Seriously, a quill. I only knew about quills due to my readings. I took the quill. Looking down at the contract, I noticed several rather strange things. For one, the contract stated that the dragons within me had to comply, not me necessarily. Also, it said something about, due to Clause A9210, the former ban of angel inbreeding with humans, punishable with loss of wings or banishment into the dark lands will be raised, only with the exception that the one committing the crime is mating with the being below. What the heck? Hey, Gabrielle-san, what is this? I asked, pointing to the area. She frowned, after a minor blush appeared on her face. This is. She started trying to make something up, I could tell. The flash of darkness that ran through her wings didn't help, either. My eyebrow twitched. I wasn't exactly inclined to go through with this whole scenario, after all. It irked me even further that the 2 dragons within me were bursting out in laughter, clearly having thought wrong. She couldn't possibly be inclined to do that, after all. My brother. Well, I suppose I should explain something. You 3, shoo now. Don't worry, you only needed to be here as witnesses. I can handle myself, Gabrielle said, trying to urge the 4 back. But ma'am, your brother explicitly told us to guard you. Besides, this is the duo heavenly dragon we're talking about. The man protested, but Gabrielle held up her hand. If he were at full strength, it would be almost like facing the Great Red. Or off ice, for that matter. Don't worry, I do not sense any malice from him, though he doesn't trust us yet, she said, whispering the last part. The 3 guards reluctantly left, leaving the 2 of us alone with the silent Ark, who was now asleep to heal his wounds faster. All right, explain, Gabrielle, I demanded. She sighed. The line of angels is very strange, in a sense. We were created from God, obviously, and have been protecting the world ever since. However, God made it possible for us to choose to be good or evil by choice, thus, those that wish to fall asleep with humans. Understanding you so far, I said slowly. Good. However, you are quite rare. You have to understand, there has never been a heavenly duo dragon before, and if there had been, they would have died before anybody could discover them. You are overly unique, think about it. Besides the whole 2 dragons thing, I don't understand, I replied after a long thought. She sighed. Okay, let me break it down for you then. You are, first of all, the first ever existing duo dragon wielder. From what the mutual faction scientists have discovered about you without your permission, of course, is that right now, you are slowly absorbing the 2 dragons within you, effectively becoming more and more draconic. It was inferred that eventually, should you not die, you will absorb nearly all the life force of those 2 dragons, first of all, becoming immortal, and second of all, becoming as strong as or perhaps stronger than the 2 most powerful beings in all of existence. The Great Red and Off-Eyes the Infinite. However, you are still human, meaning you can willingly go into any faction at all. Here's where it gets more complicated. You've already encountered all 3 factions. The leaders contacted you while you slept before, and yet, you've been a part of one of the most aspiring young devil groups. Gone head-to-head with an incredibly powerful dragon within a few days of actually acquiring powers. Have a surplus of pure magic within you that shouldn't be at all controllable. Oh, and let's not even mention the fact of how your parents are angels now, which, despite them giving birth to you while human, grants you the angel bonus of being perfectly in tune with your power. Add to that, you're male, which means it'll be easier for you to have offspring, Gabrielle added, and at the last second, a bit reluctantly. I then understood what she wanted, and why the 2 were laughing that hard. I flushed. Why you mean this? This break in the laws of nature are so I can sleep with you, so you can bear my offspring. I protested. She smiled. When you put it that way, it sounds as if I'm doing something scandalous. She winked. Ugh, I groaned. Are you serious? Does this mean that the other factions are having this situation as well? Most likely, yes, she said, and I groaned. Putting the topic to the side for now. There doesn't seem to be anything else outside of what we discussed, so I'll sign it, I said, picking up the quill once again and signing my name at the bottom, the ink somehow a bloody red. Gabrielle smiled cheekily. Great. Your first training mission will be soon. I advise you to prep up, she said sternly. I sighed. Okay then, what am I doing? A maiden by the name of Asia Argento has been captured and influenced by fallen angels. Your mission is to find and eliminate her. Be advised, she may seem like a kind and innocent soul, but she once healed a devil only for the devil to kill a priest, Gabriel warned. I sighed. When do I leave? A girl with long blonde hair and green eyes sat uncomfortably in the warehouse. She was feeling sad prior, but now felt almost at peace for the strangest reason. It was surprising, especially to her, that she was so at peace when she was almost certain that she would die a terrible death. Rainer would eventually kill her and take her powers. After all, she was positive of that fact. However, she felt a little sad as she sat in her small, enclosed living space, knowing that someone else would most likely soon die as well. The boy called Hayato Issei would die for sure, and she somewhat pitied him. Asia Argento, a former nun and now prisoner of a powerful broken-off group of fallen angels, felt pity for this seemingly innocent, weak boy. She had heard of the evil fallen angels' plans earlier, and knew for certain the boy was dead. He didn't have the powers that she did after all, and nobody that Asia knew could stand up against Rainer. The woman was evil, she was certain. Asia had seen Rainer's apparent, innocent act that she was planning to use to seduce the next powerful human that came along. But by a stroke of fate, the next one to come along happened to be Hayato Issei, a teenager that she couldn't allow to live. She had tried to bring it up with her superiors, of course, but merely got in trouble with it. That was why she was rogue now. Of course, it wasn't as if the powerful rogue fallen angel was alone, oh no. She had a few close friends, also fallen angels, with her. There was no way anybody would be able to stop her from taking this girl's power. It would only be a few more hours before the ceremony would be ready. She couldn't wait. Asia Argento was making a small prayer when a small sizzling sound startled her. From out of the sky fell a little object, and it was falling towards her at an alarming rate. With a large crash, the tiny object created some smoke, which slowly cleared. In front of her, laying injured and stunned, was a little blue and yellow dragon. It moaned weakly, paralyzed from the zap that had occurred when it had tried to go into the barricaded area. Apparently, the fallen angels had set up some sort of electric force field, only powerful enough to disable him. Asia gasped as she examined the little lizard as it moaned weakly. It could feel this girl's intentions. They were all innocent and pure. She wasn't like the evil woman that Gabriel had described. She looked and felt sweet and innocent. His new friend would definitely need to know this, discreetly that is. Asia watched on as the little dragon pitifully tried to move towards the now shattered window, moving a few steps then falling, exhausted. Asia quickly prepared her powers. A green aura surrounded her hands as her powers began to take effect, and the little lizard stared in disbelief as his paralysis stopped, and his cuts from the window faded. He lifted himself, exhaustion now a foreign thing, and shot Asia a curious glance. Should he kill her? She had a pure and innocent heart, that was for sure. No matter what the angel said, he could tell better. You should fly away as quickly as you can, little guy, Asia said softly, smiling to the dragon, who cocked an eyebrow. I don't want Rainer to hurt you. Please, leave now and stay away, Asia added, trying now to shoo the dragon, who merely stared at her, thinking. She seemed really nice. The little dragon nodded to her, actually affectionately licking her cheek with his small tongue, before flying off, being careful of the force field around the warehouse. He could smell a fire cooking, meaning that someone was starting one. Probably for a ritual. Asia watched as the little lizard flew off, looking back occasionally, but still leaving at a relatively good pace. A sudden voice startled her. Saved the little Draco, did you? Good job on that, but the next time you use your powers without our permission, the man said, snarling. Asia nodded, frightened, and the man put on a disgusting smile. Good girl. Come on now. Rainer wants to talk with you, he said, licking his lips. With the little dragon, it flew a few hundred feet away from the warehouse, noting its features every once a while, and then dived straight into a portal that appeared out of thin air. The air shifted as the dragon reappeared in its father's lair, where his father and new friend were learning something. Okay, I've shown you the technique over 50 times by now. You should have gotten it by now, Runt. Ark roared, irritated. He had been showing him the basic summoning technique, since he might need assistance if it got messy. Og, and I've told you that everything is happening correctly. I put my power into this seal here, Issei began, pointing to a lightning bolt on his shoulder. Punch straight, focusing the power into that one spot, and then release it at the punch. The lightning bolt comes out, but you aren't there. Damn it, I never should have agreed to this. His father's thunderous reply came. Shut up, I'm doing it all right, maybe you are teaching me wrong. Issei shouted back, crossing his arms the other direction. The little dragon sighed, before speaking. Rah 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 rah. He yelped and Ark snorted. What did he say? Issei asked. He stopped for a moment as his two friends translated. Rah rah rah. The little dragon added, sarcastically. Geez, why were his friend and dad so helpless? Wait. Now that you mention it like that, it makes sense. Issei said slowly, thinking it out as his dragons translated for him. Ark groaned too. Of course we can't be in here while you summon me. You can't summon me when I'm already here. Ark groaned, and the two nodded to each other. Thanks, Raijin, Issei said, using the name he had thought up for him. Raijin nodded, before saying a long series of little growls and yelps, telling the two what had happened on his scouting mission. Ark growled. I've told you to be more careful, offspring. I swear, you're hopeless without me. Ark grumbled, making Raijin snort. Issei contemplated what he had been told. You're telling me that basically, this Asia girl isn't evil. What reason would Gabrielle have to lie to me though? And besides, her wings didn't spike black, so, Issei thought, contemplating. She probably managed to trick my little offspring here, making him think she was innocent, and simply wanted to be rescued from the fallen angels, Ark said. Issei shook his head. Gabrielle didn't tell me about the fallen angels, either. Maybe she doesn't lie if she leaves stuff out. Issei said aloud, still thinking. Ark nodded, as did Raijin, and mentally, Albion and D-Drag did as well. She isn't lying if she doesn't say something, after all, Ark offered. Raijin agreed with him, and the two older dragons confirmed this, having dealt with her in the past. In any case, I say I go to this female, don't kill her, but only after making sure she's not a threat. After that, I'll decide if she is or not. Raijin, you told me before you have an ability to read hearts. How were those of the people there? He asked the little dragon. The girl was very nice and sweet, and her heart innocent. However, those with her, guarding her, the fallen angels. I could tell they were evil, Raijin growled, and Issei nodded. In which case, the fallen angels die, no questions asked. The girl, maybe, depends how she reacts with me. Anything else? Issei asked. Raijin thought for a moment. Yeah, I was able to sense multiple other creatures around the area, all of them devils. Some of them are those of your former peerage, Issei, one of them isn't, and it's very powerful, Raijin warned. Issei hummed. I suppose I could always drop in for a scare on my former group, even though I didn't know them that long, it should be surprising. Alright, I'll get suited up now, I guess. Thank goodness you had armor and stuff for me, Ark. Ark snorted. Do you know how many have tried to come here to tame me? Do you think it was hard to find some armor that some schmuck had worn, coming here thinking he was a dragon emperor? Trust me, it was a piece of cake. It's nice that Gabrielle was able to give you a sword though, Ark added, pointing to the sharp weapon leaning against a cave wall. Issei shrugged. Yeah, but I haven't got the slightest clue on how to use it. Albion and D-Drag said they could show me later, considering how their past hosts wielded weapons, but still, I haven't got the time for that right now. Raijin offered, and Issei smirked. Nice idea, it would go along nicely with the armor, after all. I think I'll take it, Issei finalized, grabbing the blade and beginning to slide on the armor, trying to ignore how someone had died in them. It still puzzles me how she got her hands on a dragon's blade, especially that one. Ark grumbled to himself, getting chuckles as a reply. Whatever. So, you're going to take your armor, your sword. Can I come too? No, Ark, not yet. I'll summon you if I have to, but from what Albion and D-Drag have told me, it'd be better off for the both of us if I didn't summon you so soon, especially since we're in Japan. They told me that there are a lot of dragon slayers who would die to get their hands on you, Issei said, feeling worried for his friend, who scoffed out fire. HMP. You're in more danger than I am, but fine I guess. Raijin and I will just stay here. I guess I'd have to stay anyways, considering I know how to open the portal. Ark added as an afterthought. Issei shook his head. Sorry, Ark, but Raijin has to come with me. Mainly because he can tell me about any traps, warn me about incoming people, tell me when people are lying. Issei listed off, irking Ark. Oh fine, take the little one and not the big one. Whatever, go on then, have fun, Ark said wistfully, turning around. You have my solemn vow that I'll take you with me next time, or at least summon you, Issei offered, and immediately, Ark grinned. Okay, apology accepted. Now seriously, go, he said, gesturing with his hand and creating a portal. Issei breathed deeply as he braced for battle. His sword was strapped onto his back, his armor all fully on. With a deep breath, started to run and jump through the portal, Raijin flying with him. When he could see straight again, he was standing on a hilltop, overlooking the warehouse that the fallen angels and human had taken control of. There were trees to his left and right, behind him, and a small, clear trail in front of him that cut through the forest. The moon was full, and he breathed a deep breath. All right then, Raijin, just tell me any warnings as we go, okay? Issei said to the little dragon, who nodded. He stated, and Issei nodded. After a few more instructions, he went 10 steps forward and Raijin breathed some fire for him, making a gap in the field. The two broke into the inner area of the shield, undetected. Issei gave Raijin a thumbs up, which was returned with a grin. I feel your friends approaching swiftly. I strongly suggest you go towards the fortress now, evil intent 20 meters to the left, probably a fallen angel, waiting to ambush. Same thing from the right, and 30 towards the center. Ready for your debut? Raijin asked, getting off of Issei, who nodded. I'm ready, Raijin ordered, and a flash of white lightning broke the sky, splitting off into multiple branches as it struck 3 points in a perfect triangle. A few yelps of surprise rang clear in the night. Whoa, Raijin, that was awesome. Issei congratulated, but his voice fell when he noticed how tired Raijin was. Hey, you okay, buddy? He asked, picking him up. He said sadly, feeling a bit useless. Don't worry, I never would have known of them if you hadn't told me about them. Take a rest on my shoulder for the rest of the way, Raijin, or find some place to hide, he said, and the little dragon took the first offer, going to the spot on the armor already designated for him. Just as he settled and was locked in, 3 fallen angels simultaneously appeared, each slightly singed and angry. Boy, what's the big deal, brat? the one in the trench coat demanded, backed up by the other two. Sorry, I'm on a mission, fallen angels, Issei said, trying to sound cockier than he really was. The three paled. Okay, then you're going down, the trench coat man said as he summoned his power. He was surrounded in black aura as suddenly, two large, pitch-black wings appeared on his back, and a large light blue light spear as well, which hovered next to him. First-person POV. The other two, both females I noted, did the same, and in front of them appeared a yellow and pinkish-violet spear. The first girl with the yellow spear was a blonde, I noted, and looked like a brat, actually wearing the school uniform. The second, with the pinkish-violet spear, was dressed in Gothica clothing. I sighed. These were, apparently, weaker fallen angels, appropriate to practice on. I drew my blade, trying my luck. The three frowned. A blade? Maybe he's one of the angelic knights. The blonde girl asked, spear still hovering near her. The Gothica girl shook her head. Not possible. None of those fools can use magic. What do you think, Donaseek? The man they called Donaseek frowned even more. I don't know. We'll find out when he fights. Then come at me, I said, shifting into what I thought is the best stance. My feet were shifted apart, my left in front of my right, and I had my blade in my left hand, which was pointed at him. He scowled. So be it, he said, waving his hand at me. I stared for a moment, startled, when I heard in my head, partner. Move, now. D-Drag warned me, and I took what he said to heart, dolphin diving to the left, rolling a bit as I tried to get back up. Where I had previously been standing was now completely covered in small blindingly white projectiles, some resembling ninja stars. I turned to see the three gone. Damn it, I growled, turning my head one way then the next, trying to figure out what was happening. A sudden light startled me, and I sidestepped just in time to catch Donaseek's surprised look as he sailed past me, trailing his light spear. My blade was already raised. With a single slice, I sliced the fallen angel in half, and his entrails fell to the ground as his spear dissipated, his two halves now on the ground. I couldn't take the graphic display and barfed at the spot. The two other fallen angels floated across from me, clearly shocked. He killed him so quickly, the blonde said, being the first to react. The Gothica girl shook her head. I'm out of here. I knew Rainier was being drastic. I'm going to go back to Azazel and plead for forgiveness. I don't care what you do, she said, suddenly flying off. The other girl thought for a moment, then threw her spear. I lifted up my blade a bit too slowly, surprised by the sudden action and still off balance from killing Donaseek, but the spear never hit me. Instead, it sailed to my feet, hitting the ground in front of me. When I looked up, the two were gone, leaving Donaseek at my feet, dead. I looked down to see nothing but the spear. So that's what she had done? Huh. I suppose. It makes a bit of sense. The two never realized who I was though, strange. Raijin warned me, but I simply turned around, having heard them already. I activated my two gears. How are you, Rias? I asked slowly, turning as I did so. I saw the group's astonished expression upon seeing me, and I couldn't blame them. They were probably surprised at the armor I was wearing, after all. My head was protected by a helm, which jutted off and followed the sides of my face, the top having spikes protruding towards either side, which were curved back. At my chest I wore a rather lightweight breastplate, which covered my entire midsection, some covering up to my upper arm as armor, leaving the rest of my arms exposed. I wore a black shirt underneath the whole design, which was visible at the sleeves due to my armor. I had on dark-colored pants, and the most amazing part were my feet. The shoes that I was wearing resembled talons, and they dug into the ground with every step. On my breastplate was a dragon, which probably served as a symbol. At my shoulder lay Raijin, although he couldn't be seen. Oh yeah, and of course, my blade probably surprised them. It was a double-edged bastard sword, having a gilded hilt and small guard that protruded spikes towards every direction. The blade itself came out of a small dragon's mouth and extended 3 feet. Issei, I heard Rias say. I nodded, and my wings flapped once. My boosted gear and divine dividing had not changed much since last time, though there were now small beads on each, boosted gear having white beads, while divine dividing had red ones. I ignored them. Yes, Rias, it's me. I don't die so easily, you see, and as much as I hate to admit it, Beelzebub was right, I didn't die, I said calmly, despite my heart racing. I quickly thought of what to do. I couldn't fight them, that was for sure. I could barely maybe handle Kiba or Kaneko on my own. Rias or Akino would finish me like I was nothing. I could run, of course, but how far would I get? I could always summon Arc. Ria's expression hardened, and I looked over the group. Rias herself looked quite upset and somewhat distracted, although for what reasons I didn't know. Akino simply stared at me with that strange yet somewhat attractive smile, and due to Raijin's help, I could tell she was feeling a bit sadistic. Kiba had almost no expression on his face besides that of confusion, though I doubted he would do anything unless Rias told him to. He was very simply that way. Kaneko just kept staring at me, not taking her eyes off of me, probably suspecting me of half a dozen different things. I sighed. Troublesome. What are you doing here? Kaneko said suddenly, and all of us turned our gaze to her, even Kiba. What do you mean? I asked. Exactly what I said. Why are you here? She asked me again. I gulped. I'm on a mission, given to me by 10th level angel, Gabriel, I said, telling the truth. I could tell from the gasps and shocked expressions that they didn't believe me, however. Are you aware, then, of what this makes us? Riaz asked me slowly, shifting her hand seemingly casually, though I could tell she was prepping for a fight. I gulped again. Perhaps I shouldn't have said that. I couldn't take all of them on at once, and I didn't want to summon and endanger Ark. I had to hurry up anyways, so what could I do? If you want to know a reason to not attack me, summon Sona, I said desperately, remembering how her sister had hinted that she was upset. This certainly surprised the group, and before I could even react, Riaz growled at me, muttering something incomprehensible before a violet magic circle appeared next to her, and the air shimmered as a girl stepped out. She was a young woman around Riaz's age, with black hair styled in a short bob cut and violet eyes. She was wearing the school uniform and had a pair of red glasses. What is it? She asked Riaz, not even sparing me a glance. Riaz glared at me. This traitor says that you have some sort of reason for us to not attack him, Riaz said confidentially, believing there to be none. I was sweating bullets as I watched the group, and the clock was still ticking to help Asia or kill her, depending on what she was like. Sona regarded me, and I saw a calculative look in her eyes as she assessed me. I gulped. I see no reason to kill him, Riaz. Would you mind telling me who I'm looking at, by the way? She asked, sounding bored. Riaz nodded. This is Hayatu Issei, Duo Heavenly Dragon Wielder, Riaz said, adding my apparent title. Sona's eyes widened. This is the one you foolishly betrayed, she exclaimed in a voice higher than usual. Riaz raised an eyebrow. How did you hear about that? My sister, Sona replied coldly. Riaz growled a bit. Look, we don't have any time for this. My peerage is only here to save a girl named Asia Argento. Apparently she met with Kiba a while ago. I know her, I said suddenly. Everyone stared at me. I cleared my throat. What I mean to say is my mission involves her safety. I guarantee you, though, I'm not bringing her to the angels. Sona and Riaz both had very different expressions. If you are not aiding them, then who are you aiding? Riaz asked. Myself, I said slowly, hesitantly. Sona hummed, thinking, then stepped forward. You may pass, she said to me, and I hesitated on showing my back, but still flapped my wings and left, going towards the warehouse. Why had she let me go? And also, why had Riaz let me go, anyways? Albion suggested. I agree with him on this one. It's possible she let you go just so you could help her later. After all, she specializes on strategy from what I've heard, D-Drag added. I nodded, but still raced forward towards the mansion, blade drawn. Rajan stopped, hesitantly, and I did too, hovering in front of the warehouse. Where do you think she is, then? I asked, a bit impatient. I'd lost enough time with the devils, after all. Rajan said after a while, and I nodded, skyrocketing up. Looks like my flying has gotten better. In front of me was obviously Asia, nearly naked and chained to a post. A few feet behind her, there was a sort of altar, shrine, steps leading up to a single cross. All she was wearing was a simply large black shirt, and it was obvious to me that she wasn't wearing much else. When I landed, her eyes widened, and she tried to speak, but was gagged. MMF, 3000, she tried to say to me, obviously panicking. I held up my hands, sheathing my sword. It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you. Everything is going to be all right, I said slowly. I knew when I saw the look into her eyes that she wasn't the evil witch that Gabriel had told me about. No, she was innocent and afraid. Upon hearing what I said, though, she shook her head and tried to make some sort of gesture, but was still chained to a sort of post. I was still advancing slowly towards her when all of a sudden, my head began to pound, and I bent over double. That girl. Why does she look so familiar? I knew her. I kept staring at her as her eyes widened in shock, and I began to see double, my head pounding so hard I began to hear the vibrations. Ugh, I groaned as I slowly got back on my feet, barely stable. I would ask her how I knew her later. First, I would have to save Asia. Just as I was about to take another step forward, I heard Rajan shout something, and for it to quickly get translated. I heard, just as a sharp pain appeared in my stomach. To my increasing horror, I looked down to see, once again, a large, blindingly white spear piercing through me. Third person with Sona and others. TCH, Uruto. Riaz growled, turning her head to the blonde prince. He straightened, turning his gaze away from a fast Issei. Yes, but you? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Strange, for the past few days, she had seemed rather agitated. Go after him. If he doesn't unconditionally surrender, strike him down, no mercy. Riaz added, her eyes hardening as her classmates all gave her a surprised look. Nobody was more surprised, however, than Sona. You aren't Riaz, Sona declared, head held high as she lifted a hand to stop Kiba. He looked between the two uncertainly, but Riaz didn't give him any further commands, so he stayed standing. What do you mean? Of course I'm Riaz. Riaz growled at Sona, surprising the others even more. That's it. You are way more irritated than usual. Does it have something to do with? Sona asked slowly, and the unspoken message between the two was passed. Riaz lowered her previously high-held head and her face saddened. Yes, it's been confirmed. Sona raised an eyebrow. Even then, there is no reason for you to be doing this. Stop it, Riaz. We are reversing our roles now. I'm not supposed to be the one that shows more mercy, remember. Now then, Sona finalized, turning to the other three, who all looked on uncertainly. Your president is having a rather bad week. Please, take her back to your living quarters, Sona said, and as if on cue, a small magic circle appeared over Ria's head and she fell into a blissful, dreamless sleep. Kiba quickly caught her, the three now facing her. If you don't mind me asking, Kiba began. Sona nodded for him to continue. What will you be doing? I will be observing this boy. Now go on. Something is about to happen, Sona warned, and she created a magic circle for the four to transport back in, before turning to the rooftops and letting her wings emerge, carrying her towards the roof. All this time, her arms were closed as she contemplated. Back with Issei. Issei's eyes widened to twice their size as a small explosion shook the rooftops, sending him flying towards the altar. His armor was the only thing that prevented him from getting a few things broken, and as it was, the explosion was so up close and personal that his armor had been completely shattered. Raijin reacted promptly as the two fell and aborted off of Issei's armor, landing near Asia, not noticed by Rainier and Issei. Asia's eyes widened and a few tears fell as she watched the smoke clear, expecting a dead person. She really didn't want someone to die because of her, but what could she do? The poor boy had tried to challenge a fallen angel. Suddenly, a small shadow appeared in the smoke. First POV. I rose unsteadily to my feet as I listened to my two comrades. That blast had friggin' hurt. Apparently, after it had pierced straight through my so-called powerful armor, the spear had promptly detonated, sending me flying towards the strange altar thing. I looked down at my chest in the smoke. I was bleeding rather badly, which was of course the bad thing. The good thing, however, was that obviously I could still stand. However, it looked really bad. Too bad I didn't know anything about healing. It seemed that Albion and D-Drag were doing their best to help. However, as soon, a white layer of magic covered my stomach, and another red layer appeared over it. I decided that I would be fine for now. I looked at my arms. Good, my two sacred gear were still active, and I could feel my wings on my back. My sword was still intact, and I picked it up, already feeling strain on my body. With a large flap of my wings, the smoke that had formed dispersed, and I faced the fallen angel. She had long, brown hair to her shoulders, and was wearing her school uniform, ironically. Our eyes met and I could feel her malice, but then, her eyes widened. Why you? She exclaimed at me. I raised an eyebrow. What? I killed you. Why? How are you alive? I heard that you left that devil group, so you should be dead. She exclaimed, and I sighed. I don't need to tell you. All that you need to know is that I was sent by angels. They told me what to do, and so you are going down, I said slowly, grinding out the last few words as I held my sword awkwardly in my right hand. I felt strange, and so shifted it to my left, which felt more comfortable. D-Drag suddenly said, and I hesitated. What will that do? My sword isn't biological, I thought back. Yes, but my power should be able to influence this specific sword as well. Just try it. I'll try to give you tips as you fight, seeing as how one of my last partners was a swordsman. I nodded thanks, and tried to channel his power into it. It had been a while since I had expended energy with Arc, and so I felt a small amount of stress being released from my body as my sword began to glow a bright red, making Rainer's eyes widen as we stood to a standstill. Albion instructed, and I nodded, temporarily distracted. I noted that to my left, Raijin was hiding behind the pole that Asia was tied to, working his best to destroy the knots that tied her to the pole. I then realized I had made a mistake. Don't take your eyes off the enemy in a battle, I heard, and I instinctively raised my sword up, the red aura still around it as a spear hit it, actually shifting me back quite a bit as I tried to stop it. Obviously, it had been thrown with the intent to kill. D-Drag, I cried out loud as I continued sliding back, the spear not stopping. I noticed that the concrete and gravel was being dug into as well. Shift your weight to the right, let it swerve past you. Then, while she is distracted, charge the angel. D-Drag said enthusiastically, and I quickly pivoted on my toes, feeling a small rush as the out-of-control spear flew straight past me, nearly hitting the altar. I blindly charged forward, wildly swinging my sword. Stop flailing. Hold your sword in both hands, keep lighter on your feet, and get ready to duck. D-Drag chastised me. I stopped flailing, and quickly reached up my left claw hand, now gripping the sword with both hands as I reached Rainier, swinging down. Just as the sword was about to touch her, however, I felt a huge pain in my gut, and flinched. Just enough time for her to sidestep and my sword to miss, before she kicked me roughly in the stomach, sending me flying back. I coughed up some blood, and looked down. Damn, I cursed, surprised that I could even still walk. My stomach was still a big blotch of red, and with that last kick, it had reopened. Not even with Albion and D-Drag healing me would I be able to finish this battle easily. I looked up to see Rainier walking slowly towards me, confident. Behind me, I heard a gasp of surprise. I didn't turn my head, however. I'd already learned that mistake once. So you didn't die. Yet you delivered yourself, that's nice. Now I won't have to hunt you down to kill you, Rainier leered at me, her spear flying back to her awaiting palm. I scowled, or tried to, but then doubled over in pain. Yes, bow to me, bow, Rainier shouted, before beginning to laugh maniacally, her arms up. I began to see blotches appear at the sides of my vision as she pulled out a knife and stabbed me in the chest with it, my body not responding for some reason. Yet still, I stared up at her, trying to not show fear. A few moments later, my world span as I felt a sharp pain on my chest push me onto my back, the knife still embedded into my chest. I could hear Albion and D-Drag try to speak to me, but for some reason, their voices began to get murky. Suddenly, their voices got more and more clear, and I sighed, the pain in my chest and stomach going away slowly. It seemed death wasn't all that bad. I opened my eyes to see Rainier walking away, speaking on her mobile. She seemed rather agitated, pacing back and forth and making wild gestures with her hands. I could just barely pick up what she was saying. It got clearer after a while, though. Should. Pardoned. I killed him. The one you told me to watch, in case he became a threat. Come on, Azazel-sama. Take me back already. No, wait, don't hang up. Rainier pleaded, throwing her phone to the side out of anger. She completely passed by me, and I looked down at my chest and stomach. There was no wound at all, besides the hole on the shirt. The dagger previously in my chest harmlessly fell to the ground, making a large metal sound. I turned to see Rainier staring in shock, but not at me. The blonde girl known as Asia stared back at her, cowering behind the pole she had previously been chained to. In her arms was Raijin, and he defiantly stared down the fallen angel, some loose electricity coming off of him in a threatening way. What did you do, you slut? Bitch, you healed that boy, Rainier demanded, and Asia quickly nodded her head, still trying to make herself look as little as possible. I got up slowly, getting my sword back to before, but Rainier still shouted at Asia. Piece of shit, why did you help heal him? Why, you stupid girl? Rainier demanded again, lifting her spear, rage shone in her eyes. My own eyes widened as I ignored a warning from the two dragons and sprinted forward the few meters, putting my hands up and stopping the spear that would have otherwise killed Asia, who made a small noise in shock. The spear dug into my claws heavily, but eventually I remembered Albion's previous advice again. Divide, I announced, and the spear halved in size, my body channeling the magic and expelling it through my wings, likely making them grow a little in the process. The spear shrunk and stopped, before I grabbed it and snapped it in half, tossing it to the feet of a shocked Rainier. Stand down. Fallen angel, I said slowly, channeling energy again, getting ready to blast should I need it. Rainier simply stared at me stupidly. But you were dead, she said slowly, idiotically. I tilted my head, but otherwise kept adding more magic to the one I had in storage, ready to shoot off. Leave, fallen angel, I repeated, and Rainier repeated what she had said as well, her small mind probably having cracked. I sighed as I quickly moved forward and before she could react, hit her at a point on the back of her head that Albion instructed, effectively knocking her out, her dark angel wings disappearing with them as she face vaulted, creating a small dent in the concrete no doubt. I sighed, turning back to the blonde girl who had been uneasily leaning against the small pole this entire time. Thank you, I think. Were you the one that helped me? I asked Asia, already knowing her name. She nodded slowly, as if coming out of trance. I walked over and grabbed my sword, salvaging my sheath which had surprisingly survived me being half blown up. I strapped it on, subconsciously using some magic to repair the broken strap, before picking up the sword and putting it in its sheath. I turned back to Asia impatiently. Now will you please explain all of this? I asked a bit rudely and bluntly, and my eyes widened when she suddenly crossed a distance between us, and I felt wetness on my shirt and heard some sniffling. To my sides, a small pair of pale white smooth arms wrapped around me, and I felt a strange heat in my chest as the little girl looked up at me. Thank you, Oni-chan. She sobbed slowly, crying into my shirt. I'd never dealt with this sort of situation before, and my mind slowly shut down as I awkwardly hugged her back, letting her bawl. Third person nearby. Sona bit her lip as she watched the heart-wrenching scene, calculating, contemplating. The duo Heavenly Dragon Wielder didn't do the boy justice. She'd call him Dual Divinity instead. Yes, there was a much better name to call him. The boy would have been a good devil. But what he probably didn't realize was that he still owed her. Even if he no longer contained the 8 pieces of Rias, Sona couldn't find the pieces she'd donated. In other news, Sona could easily sense someone nearby, trying to hide their energy. It was a pitiful attempt, but those meat-headed power types couldn't possibly have sensed it. Sona quickly teleported over to where the power signature was, correctly hiding her own energy signature. In front of her, watching the scene, was a devil she knew quite well. Theodor Astaroth stood tall and proud, his posture showing near nobility and fearlessness as he watched Asia tightly embrace the dual divinity. He clenched his teeth and fists as his insane mind raced through a number of ways to slaughter the dragon wielder, but shot down those ideas quickly. There was no way he'd try to kill the boy in order to look bad in front of his dear Asia-chan, after all. Sona watched as the insane devil muttered to himself, smiling crazily at some points, sneering at others. She slowly and calmly created her own teleportation circle, careful to avoid noise and tip him off. Before teleporting, however, she pointed a finger and a small magic circle appeared on Deodora's back, before fading away. First person back with Issei. I was getting tired of Asia hugging me. It felt good, don't get me wrong, but I simply wasn't used to people physically showing affection. I was about to pry her off slowly, but then I saw Raijin nearby, landing on her shoulder and nipping her ear. Asia slowly got off of me, her eyes still red, and looked at my little acquaintance. Suddenly, she completely got off of me, stepped back a step, and bowed to the two of us deeply. I said slowly, but she didn't hear. Thank you, Issei-san. Thank you, Issei-san. Thank you, Issei-san, Asia repeated constantly, head going up and down. I contemplated asking her how she knew my name, but dropped the subject as soon as it appeared. Raijin and I exchanged a look and had somewhat of a nonverbal discussion of trying to get the other being to take action. He was better than I was at giving dirty looks, so the task fell to me. Asia was still bowing to me when I slowly reached out a hand and hesitantly put it on her head, stopping her bowing. It's all right, Asia. Are you okay though? Do you want some more clothing? I choked out, remembering how little she was wearing. She looked at me for a second, eyes still red and confused. Suddenly, she came to realization of how little she wore. Eep, Asia squeaked, covering her mouth and flushing red. I thought she looked a bit cute, and the three dragons let me know it. Albion asked, and I could tell he probably had a shit-eating grin if he had a face. The girl does have the twilight healing ability. Perhaps you should help her carry on the sacred gear. D-Drag cleared his throat, obviously trying to keep his voice level. Unlike the two elder dragons, Raijin had no qualms with teasing me, and didn't have the maturity to do it correctly. He actually fell on the ground, pounding his little claws on the ground in a very human-like gesture. Raijin laughed, panting for breath as he rolled back and forth. My eye twitched once, then twice, and then stopped. The little dragon was the equivalent of a child. After all, his immaturity could be dismissed. You are such a prude. How much of a recluse are you? Gahaha. You were all like, and now will you please explain Gahaha. Raijin interrupted my thoughts, still slamming his palms on the ground. Asia had left for the moment, apparently putting on some actual clothing, and I looked down at the mini dragon. Even Buddha could lose his patience. Brett, I shouted in my best arc impression, and brought my fist down solidly on the little dragon's head, sending his head crashing into the ground, bouncing once before laying, eyes swirly. Oh, now that's taken care of, I said, brushing off my hands casually, my eye stopping its twitching. What to do about this one? I said slowly, looking down at Rainier. She was still unconscious, and her mouth was open, a little drool coming out as she peacefully slept. There was the first option of killing her, of course, but I saw no reason to. Okay, scratch that, plenty of reason to kill her. She abducted Asia. She tried to kill me. She's an evil, sadistic fallen angel. Yet, I turned my gaze down and saw the sliced-up body of Donosik. I wasn't that kind of person to mercilessly go around killing people. If she had done worse, I could justify it, but she was probably just acting on orders. If anything, I could no doubt keep her as a prisoner. Rainier shifted a bit below me, no doubt about to wake up, and so I pointed my sword at her, careful to be at a distance. Albion, D-Drag, any advice? I whispered furtively. There was a brief pause. Albion said, probably shrugging. My sweat dropped. Solutions that don't involve killing. I asked again. D-Drag responded this time. Hold on, cut a small scar on your finger, then write in the concrete. I'll tell you what to write. Get her to sign it as a contract, D-Drag told me, and I nodded, making a very small cut on my finger and then writing as he said, realizing what I was effectively making. A contract, I asked quietly, and I felt the equivalent of a nod. This here makes sure she will pretty much become your slave, and not make any ill intentions towards you. It also states how she cannot injure anyone you do not explicitly order her to attack. It's a bonding contract. D-Drag explained for me, and I nodded. A slave though, fair bit harsh, don't y'all think? I asked quietly. Albion backed up D-Drag, and the two explained to me how she would have to sign. I nodded as they explained, before she finally woke up. What? Hit me, she said slowly, her words slurring. I heard some light steps from behind me, and a slight gasp obviously from Asia. I didn't turn, however. I did. Now then, fallen angel Rainier. Right now, as I have defeated you in combat, I offer you two choices. 1. Death, a very plain and simple choice. You have wronged me multiple times in the past, with murder attempts, I began, and Rainier growled at me. I continued. Your second option, and please note how generous I am being with this offer, is to sign this contract that I have written in blood, using your own. It is a contract, and I guarantee you, you will not die or be tortured. All it includes is your allegiance to me. Rainier stopped growling. So basically, you want me to become your servant, Rainier said bluntly, and I nodded. Yes, you will not harm me or anybody else without permission, and I guarantee you with my future there will be people that need to get hurt, unfortunately. However, if you do not sign this, I will kill you right here, right now, I finalized, lifting my blade an inch to emphasize my point. Rainier glared daggers at me. Sign a blood contract. What madness is this? I heard her mutter. Just sign it, and you will not die, I said calmly. All this time, the two in my head had been feeding me what to say. That sentence had been my first on my own. Death. I scoff at it. I've died before. I do not need pity, human. Rainier growled at me, almost lunging at me. I nearly hesitated, but still pointed my sword at her neck. She pressed it in. Come on, kill me. You don't have the guts to take an innocent life, do you? Rainier continued, slowly advancing more and more closer towards me. The blade was now pressed so hard it nearly punctured her skin. I gulped. Stand down, I tried for confidence, but apparently failed as she laughed out loud. I faced worse than death, human, Rainier said again, and with a stroke of cockiness, I declared boldly. Stop calling me that, damn it. Rainier gave me a weird look, actually backing off a bit. Calling you what? She asked me with a wary look. I breathed deeply, trying to control my fear. I summoned a bit of power subconsciously and let it roll off of me in waves. I'm not a mere human. My name is Issei, child of 2 8-winged ascended angels. My entire life thus far has been a battle for survival, trying to control the powers within myself and becoming bedridden. I contain so much power within myself that I shouldn't even be able to use my magic. Yet I now easily control the powers of 2 heavenly dragons, each possessing the power of a god. Yet my power is fully balanced. I guarantee you, fallen angel Rainier, I am no mere human. I announced boldly, and right afterwards, I nearly shrunk in realization. I had just given out half of my secrets, but it didn't seem to have been wasted. Rainier stared at me in awe, her jaw having been dropped earlier. She'd probably only known about my containing of 2 dragons, not the rest, especially the whole angelic parents thing. I saw her swallow and look up at me again, a look of resignation in her eyes. I nodded to the blood on the concrete. She quickly signed the contract, and a spark of red light finalized the contract. Instantly, a large ray of red and white light seemingly came from me, condensing into a small sphere. Before I or Rainier could react, the little light sphere floated over to Rainier and sunk into her stomach, going straight in. Rainier lifted her stomach to see what had happened, and there was now a magic circle on her stomach, not like the ones that I had seen Riaz and Sona cast. Dragon's magic. I heard Rainier gasp before locking eyes with me. I saw a small surge of red appear in her eyes, before her eyes rolled back and she passed out again, right on the spot, sprawling out onto the concrete. I sighed. Troublesome, I said, massaging my temples as I turned around to see Asia in a nun's outfit. She seemed to be at a loss of words, so I explained what had happened to her. I made a blood contract with Rainier here. She can't attack anybody without my permission anymore, can't plot anything bad, can't help anyone with malicious intent. I trailed off, waiting for her to get it. Asia seemed to come out of her stupor, and she quickly nodded, nearly bowing again, but I quickly walked forward and put my hand on her shoulder. It's all right. You've already thanked me. For now, I have a few questions for you, I said, and Asia's eyebrow rose before she nodded, and the two of us began to talk, her telling me as much as she was comfortable, me doing the same. After a while, Rajin woke up and simply watched our conversation. I learned that Asia was indeed a kind-hearted person, only a bit too naive. She had been raised in the church nearly all her life until she had healed the devil. After healing the devil, he had attacked a nearby priest of the church Asia was a part of, and she had gotten excommunicated because of it. Afterwards, she had been endlessly wandering near the church and had been found by the fallen angel Rainier, who had taken her in and pretty much influenced her to think that nobody could help her, killing random humans when Asia wouldn't do as she had wanted. I felt more and more angry at Rainier by the end of her life story and was beginning to regret my decision to not kill Rainier. It wasn't my revenge though. Asia, I said softly, and Asia wiped her tears, sniffling a bit. She had been quite emotional when telling me about her life. Why yes, Issei-san, she asked me. I sighed. Rainier can't hurt you anymore, and I want you to answer my question as honestly as you can, okay? She's not going to be conscious for a while. If you want to, you can take my sword, I said, drawing my blade, and end her life right here, right now. I guarantee you, nothing bad will come out of it. The only reason I didn't kill her earlier was because I didn't want to take an innocent life, since I thought she had been acting on orders. It's obvious to me now, though, that she wasn't. Then you're saying that if I want to, I can kill her? Asia asked me slowly, sniffling every once a while. I nodded. Here, I said, handing her my blade. For now, the life of Rainier would lie in her hands. Actually, give me a second, I muttered to her, before walking over to Rainier. Rainier, awake, I commanded, and I felt some power leave my body and boot up hers as she was required to listen to my every command. On your knees, I commanded again, and without hesitation, she got onto her knees in front of me, her posture submissive, but hatred in her eyes. Yes, master, she said slowly, still upset. I had near tricked her into signing the contract, after all. Wait in that position. Don't move at all, I commanded, before motioning to Asia, who was still holding my sword uneasily. Partner, I heard D-Drag comment. Albion remained silent. Now then, Asia, if you want to, you can end her life as her new master. I give you that right to end her life or save it. It is your choice if you want to give her mercy after all that she's done to you, I told Asia, who nodded, gulping. She looked rather distressed, but I leaned close to Rainier and whispered in her ear. Personally, Rainier, I would rather have you killed, but the right of revenge belongs to Asia. Your life is now in her hands. You said you didn't fear death. If you do not, you are a fool. You simply can't fathom the darkness that closes over you, the knowledge that your conscience will fade, that you won't think anymore, that you will die and be forgotten, I whispered into her ear, before backing off slowly, nodding to Asia. She had been red-faced and distressed the entire time as I whispered into Rainier's ear, but now she looked even worse, to the point in which I felt sorry for her. But she needed the closure. I nodded to her. It's time, I said, and she nodded back to me, raising the sword above her head. She swung my sword. 1. It said that Sona's peerage was all strategy types, while Ria's peerage was extreme in the power area. 2. Said so online. Also, D-Drag has probably met someone with that ability before. 3. Equivalent to oh my god. I heard the sword clang against the gravel and concrete and nodded, knowing that Issei had made a good choice. Rainer looked on in fear and amazement at the blade that had narrowly missed her head, coming in a full arc and hit the ground in front of her. The only visible damage on her was a slight scar on her forehead, barely noticeable to anyone not looking as hard as they could. Issei looked on, her eyes having a somewhat calm expression. She promptly dropped my sword. Rainer began to gasp. I felt a bit awkward, and so I backed up slowly, letting the two communicate. Issei then did something completely unexpected. She hugged Rainer. I know that you've been the cause of my pain for a while, Issei gasped out between crying. The two were acting quite emotional, and I felt a small pressure on my chest at the two. But you are still a person. I can forgive you. Rainer simply stared at her in shock, and I saw her eyes widen the slightest bit, her jaw having dropped a while ago. I won't kill you. Ever. I will never hurt you, even though you've tried your hardest to hurt me, I heard Issei whisper again, and I shifted uneasily. Rainer closed her eyes and cried back, finally returning the hug. The two seemed in an unbreakable bond at the moment, and I didn't really want to ruin the perfect moment. But all that I've done, Rainer said after the two stopped hugging. Issei shook her head, smiling. I forgive you, she said, and once again I felt that incredible pressure on my chest. Rainer had a shocked look on her face before smiling slowly back. From now on, I swear I will never hurt you again, and anybody that tries to will be toast, Rainer vowed, surprising even me. I guess she really was more afraid of death than she let on. Thank you, Issei began, and the two paused for a moment, and I saw Issei's eyebrows scrunch up in thought, One-san. Rainer smiled. Is it okay for me to call you that? Issei asked as an afternote. Of course, Amato, Rainer responded, patting Issei's head. The two simply stared at each other for a while, both smiling and crying a bit, before they seemed to remember me. Rainer said slowly. I guessed after nearly dying and knowing she would die, maybe she would change her ways a bit. Can I call you Nai-sama then? Issei asked me innocently. I felt a bead of sweat go down my head. Sure, I said hesitantly. I still wasn't really used to people being so affectionate. What should I call you then? Rainer asked me, fidgeting a bit. Wow, she really changed, and with such a simple action. You can just call me my normal name, I said, before I immediately heard protesting inside of my head. I ignored the two, however. I want to. But all the same, you are theoretically my master now, Rainer said slowly, nearly choking when she called me master. I smiled apologetically. I'm sorry, if I hadn't done so. How about I call you Issei-sama? Rainer asked me, again, seemingly innocently. I felt a larger bead of sweat go down my head. Sure. Listen, I should probably head back, I began, then remembered something. Oh, that's right, do you two have anywhere to even live? I don't think you live at this warehouse, right? I asked. Rainer fidgeted. Maybe, she told me, and I sighed, running my fingers through my hair. That'll have to be changed then. I didn't go through all that trouble of rescuing you and making a contract with you just for the two of you to die or get in trouble. Listen, I have a human house that I don't think any faction will have the balls to attack. I also have a sort of house with Ark right now, but it's underground, I explained. Who's Ark? Rainer asked me. Oh right, Ark is a lightning cry dragon, and he has a rather large dungeon underground. It's completely safe, I guarantee you. Wait, then do you mean you want us to live with you? Issei asked me, and I thought I saw a pleased look flash through Rainer, but I tried to ignore it. Of course, I said simply, and within a few seconds, I saw Issei coming closer to me, lifting her head up. Hey, Issei, what are you doing? I asked slowly, not understanding. Thank you, Issei said, and I saw her pucker her lips as she made me bend down and gave me a kiss on the cheek. Third person. A couple of distances away, a certain thick-headed devil had had enough, and he flew into a rage, not even bothering to simply teleport over. Damned human, stealing my Issei-chan from me, abducting her, molesting her. The odor muttered incomprehensibly, coming close to the three unaware people. He neared Issei, shocking Issei and Rainer, who could see him, before he suddenly lost control of his body, landing on the ground and rolling a bit. A small magic insignia on his back glowed bright violet. At the school, Sona calmly stripped, leaving herself only in her underwear as she changed into her night clothing. She had had a lot to think about, and figured that she may as well think on it through sleep, one of the easier ways for her to speed up the process. She had just slipped on her gown, however, when she felt a slight tug on her magic. Then a much larger one. Her eyes narrowed. It seemed the meathead had tried something. Back with the four, Issei and Rainer looked on in horror as the bound devil tried to move against the magical restraints, nearly breaking them. Issei, not realizing what they were doing, looked behind him and saw the devil on the ground, immediately realizing he didn't have any good intentions. You two, move, Issei said immediately. He received a round of protests. He's a devil, right? I see the wings. My light weapons will kill him easily, Rainer said, holding up and summoning her light spear even as she resisted the magic that made her obey. I am not leaving you, Nai-sama, Issei protested, griping Issei's arm. Go, he warned them, drawing his blade once again. A much stronger surge of energy left his body, nearly draining a third of the reserves he had left. He felt it nearly immediately get replenished by Albion and D-Drag, but it worked, and Rainer's eyes glazed over as his magic entered her, forcing her to grab Asia and take off, presumably towards a portal that Arc would create. Arc. With that thought, Issei prepared as much power as he could muster, focusing it into his arm, getting ready to punch. Suddenly, Deodora's efforts paid off, and with a primal shout, the magical barrier around him shattered, and he charged forth, flinging a fireball the size of a castle at the trio, completely ignoring Asia, who was still flying away, in his anger and outrage. Issei gulped. He hadn't charged up his magic enough, so he couldn't stop the thing. First person. My eyes widened as I thought quickly and pulled back my claw fist, gathering as much power as I could. Consequences be damned, I wasn't going to die. I realized after a millisecond that it wouldn't be enough, however, and slowly waited for the heat to burn me alive. Just as the flaming ball was about to hit us, however, I felt it suddenly vanish, and so I opened my eyes. Standing in front of me in only a bathrobe was Sona Citri. She had a strange violet-colored magic devil circle in front of her, and the fireball was being sucked into it with a slight whoosh. As the fireball funneled inside, I saw her mouth move slowly, small symbols of power appearing before her as another magic devil circle opened in a small bit of space directly above the first. A slight pause happened, as the fireball faded completely, before with a slight gesture with her hand, Sona sent the fireball flying straight back at the random man, who looked too shocked to react. As the fireball hit the man, he staggered a bit, and looked a bit strained as he just barely stood his ground. As he tried to recover, I heard Sona mutter a little under her breath, and before my very eyes, violet magic devil circles began to appear. I began to count, and they stopped at 9. Out of these many magic circles stepped 8 girls, some younger than me, some older, and 2 males, one that looked familiar. "Why you bitch?" The man began to curse at Sona, before the girl next to her lifted a palm and a barrier of magic covered the man's mouth. "Momo, Rhea, set up anti-summoning magic, quickly," Sona said, and 2 girls nodded, before they faced opposite directions, magic flying from them. I said as I stood awkwardly behind the person that had already saved me twice in a single day. "Issei Hayaudu, gotten yourself into more trouble, have you?" The male that looked familiar sneered at me, and I flushed red. I had just fought 2 fallen angels, and gotten one of them on my side, then rescued a girl targeted by the angels, and this is how I was treated. "Quiet, Saji. You should know of all people with us how powerful Issei-san can be. Actually, I'm surprised Vritra isn't irritated at you just yet. That dual divinity wielder not only contains 2 dragons, but both were capable of easily killing gods when free, and even while being contained, can still do the same." Sona defended me quickly and ruthlessly. Saji cowed a little under her criticism. "Vritra," I said softly, and I heard responses in my head. Vritra was one of the 5 great dragon kings, until he was defeated and sealed up by Indra, an Indian god. D-Drag confirmed for me. He had a big head, really, the weakest of all of the 5, and he was defeated so utterly that he got split up into multiple parts. "This kid looks like he is one of them," Albion added. I nodded mentally. I released my control over Rainier, simply retracting my magic that was influencing her. With a single verbal command, she came back, letting Asia on her feet as they stood behind me. I turned my attention back towards the group of devils as I noticed a few of them warily looking at Asia and Rainier, who were both a bit worried about the surrounding devils. I grunted. "So, who is he?" I asked Sona. Rather than reply, she nodded to another one of her peerage, who explained. "His name is Deodora Astaroth, and among other things, he is a pure-blooded devil who, apparently enjoys breaking the spirit of holy maidens kicked out of the church," one of Sona's peerage informed me. I nodded, before it got through to my mind of why he had targeted us. "So he wants to target Asia, basically?" I asked, and I received a nod. I looked past Sona to see Deodora, still unable to speak due to the magic stopping his voice. He looked really angry, and as I watched, he began to gather magic in his palms. Sona would have none of that, however, and she motioned to 2 people, a girl and a guy that looked like he was in college. The 2 nodded, and the girl ran up, drawing a blade out of midair before slashing at the man multiple times, hitting his muscles that allowed him to stand properly. The guy actually simply leapt up from where he was and fell towards the ground, hitting Deodora on the head as hard as he could, causing the warehouse top to shudder. "Saji," Sona said, and the person that had been annoying me earlier nodded as well, before creating a strange-looking snake, which swiped out around Deodora's leg, and I noticed red energy flowing away from him, into Saji. "JJHH." I heard Deodora make a strange noise, and behind me, Asia whimper a bit. Rainier seemed to hold her back, however. "Seal him up and send him to my older sister. She deserves to know why this imbecile is ignoring Law 926 subsection 3. No devil shall actively attempt to capture or kill a sacred gear user, so long as their affiliation isn't against the devils." Sona commanded, recited, and with a gesture, 3 of the girls came up, 2 of them being the girls that had sealed up the area earlier. Along with Sona herself, they created a purple seal around Deodora, and with a large shimmer of light, he disappeared. I sighed. It had been quite a bit of excitement for a single day, and I was ready to go home and rest. We had school the next day, after all. Then something alarmed me. Oh shoot, I missed school today," I exclaimed, and I swore I heard a slight TCH, as if someone was annoyed at me. I looked to see most of the group staring at me with an annoyed expression, till someone broke the silence. Don't worry, I managed to put it down as you being busy with something for the student council, one of the girls said, and I thanked her, sighing. Wait, what did the school council have to say about that? I asked, a little bewildered. We are the school council, Issei-san. Anyways, what you said is right, it is getting fairly late. We will speak tomorrow. Oh, and what are your names? The two girls behind Issei-san. The girl added. I moved to the side so they could talk. I am Asia Argento, Asia said hesitantly. She looked really nervous. Amano Yuma, Rainier said. I gave her a skeptical look, which she returned with a cheeky grin. All right, what years are you in? The girl asked again. I'm a first year. Second. The girl nodded, before turning to me. Your friends will be enrolling in our school tomorrow. Be sure to teach them what you can about interacting in a high school. Wait, Friday was my first day though. I protested, but the girl shook her head and disappeared into a magic circle. All around, the other girls disappeared as well, and Saji scowled at me and smirked as he teleported away, leaving only Sona. After second period, you all will go to the student council meeting room. We'll send a note for you, Sona said, leaving no room for argument. I nodded, and at my side, Rainier and Asia did as well. Oh, and as a last thought, Sona said, I know of your status as a fallen angel and twilight healing user. While I cannot offer a position for you, Miss Fallen Angel, I can for you, Asia-san. Would you like to join? Asia shook her head. I am sorry, but I would rather just stay. Neutral, Sona sighed. A pity. Your abilities would be appreciated. In any case, until tomorrow, Sona finished, disappearing into her own teleportation. I turned to face the two. All right, do the two of you have any belongings or anything you need to fetch from the warehouse? If not, I'll get Ark to open a portal to his place for us. I offered. The two shared a look and went down. I sighed as they went to get their things, trying to get my mind on straight. It was probably Monday, or maybe Tuesday. I didn't know how many days I had been passed out, but the day I went with Rias, it was definitely Sunday. That meant that, since the first day I had been to school was a Friday, I had been passed out for 3 days before I woke up. I shook my head. That didn't make any sense. You would think that magic would easily be able to heal someone, especially since it seemed that I had been resurrected rather easily. That was another topic. How would Gabriel react to this? My mission had been to kill Asia, after all, not welcome her with open arms. But then again, she had things to explain as well. Had Raja not scouted ahead for me, I wouldn't have ever known that there were fallen angels here, or that Asia wasn't evil. Hell, I might have just charged up power and destroyed the place without a second thought. Also, how would we all live? I had no doubt in mind that Asia and Rainier would be a bit awkward sharing a room with me, and I would too, for that matter. It wasn't as if my house was big enough to fit so many people. Then again, maybe my fake parents had moved. I rather doubted that a few angels would just stay in my house for so long. They had to go back to heaven, right? I was broken from my musing when I heard footsteps, and saw Rainier and Asia return, both with bags over their back. I raised an eyebrow, but nodded regardless. Ark, I shouted as loud as I could, and in front of us, the air was displaced as a sort of magic circle opened, different from the ones that the fallen angels and devils used. We all went in, and reappeared in Ark's cave, with Rajan still slung on my shoulder. Immediately, the older dragon snorted a bit of blue fire out of his snout, giving a threatening gaze towards Rainier. Rainier and Asia both sunk back a bit, fairly intimidated by the larger dragon. That is, until both Rajan and I smacked him on the head, getting him to stop. Come on, Ark, this is Asia and Rainier. They're going to be under my protection for a while, and since Rainier signed a binding contract with me, she is essentially a servant of the future dragon clan. Besides, Asia is a great healer, I added, and he nodded. You didn't have to stop my intimidation act though. Ark whined a bit, which was so amusing it was almost frightening. A fully grown dragon whining like a little child that had lost its favorite toy. Oh hush you big lump, I said, walking past him. For what it's worth, Mr. Dragon, I was scared, Asia piped up, and Ark grinned. See kid, it works. Now come on, if you're with him, I guess you're fine. My name is Ark, and this is my cave, Ark finished awkwardly as the trio began to follow me. By the way, Ark, that armor was shiny, I'll have you know, I called back. I heard a snort of laughter. It was only to scare people with. It was probably shredded to pieces after a few hits though, right? Ark asked. I heard Rainier cough a bit. Actually, a single explosion from Rainier's spear destroyed it completely. I had half a mind to find out how to make dragon burgers, I'll have you know, I grumbled, and the three laughed, Ark wholeheartedly, Rainier a little embarrassed, and Asia hesitantly. Yeah, well you should have realized that you don't have the body of a tank, Issei. It's your fault for trying to act like one, Ark sniped back, and I snorted. Really? You were the one that suggested I wear the armor. I retorted, and he bellowed in laughter. We all began to get situated, and it was established after some time that Rainier and Asia would sleep at my house, since my parents probably already left. If they had to, they would sleep in Ark's underground cave, but their first choice was still my house. We were about to go through another teleportation spell, courtesy of Ark, when a really bright light appeared from behind us. We all turned around to see Gabrielle in all her glory. Hello, Issei. Am I correct to assume that you brought these two to be executed? Gabriel asked me calmly, gesturing to Rainier and Asia. My eyes narrowed, and I scoffed. Really? That's what you have to say? Don't try to pretend that you didn't leave details out of my mission. I know what you wanted me to do, and I don't approve of it. Ark, can you show them the caverns, so they know where the traps are and stuff? I asked Ark, and I heard a grunt of reply. Wait, but isn't she? I heard Asia say, most likely talking about Gabriel. I'll talk with you guys later, Asia. Have fun exploring the place, I said, and I turned to grin at them to show that there wasn't anything wrong. Asia seemed to relax, but I noticed Rainier with a conflicted expression on her face. I ignored it. You were supposed to kill her, Gabriel continued, after they had left. She was clearly trying to intimidate me. I clenched my teeth. You lied, I growled, and saw surprise in her eyes. You said that Asia is an evil witch, one that had killed a priest in the past. She wasn't the direct cause, and just from talking to her for barely an hour, I can already tell that she is still deeply supportive of the church. So why did you want me to kill her? I continued, demanding an explanation. By the time I had finished, Gabriel looked almost angry. She was a threat to the church, willing to heal even a devil. And look at how she turned out. She ended up aiding fallen angels. Don't try to pull that bull with me. I know that you knew about the fallen angels, and yet purposely held back that information. Is that your goal in the end? Kill me, so I can become blessed and ascend to where it's better. Did you make that stuff up about my parents, too? I get it. Kill the poor lone dragon kid while he isn't powerful enough to rip off your head, I finished, growling. I didn't realize till later, but as I clenched my fists, a considerable amount of power actually flared up from me, blanketing over me and her, smothering her like a hot water wave. She definitely looked intimidated. Aye, Gabriel protested, looking astonished. Later, thinking back, I realized that she had actually been sinking back a bit onto her back feet. I actually trusted an angel's word, and not just any angel, Gabriel, the famous one for being always truthful, honest, and just. Yet I now know that a nun, one that has always been devoted to loving and nurturing, is being outcasted by the church itself. What does this mean about the rest of the church? I wouldn't be surprised if God himself were ashamed of you, I chastised, turning away from Gabriel. I was too pissed off to notice, but the very ground around me began to vibrate, and the air molecules began to shift and accelerate, as if the very space around me was getting ready to combust. I am sorry, I heard Gabriel say, but I scoffed. Apology not accepted. I half feel like retracting my earlier claim entirely. If anything, I hate you angels even more now than before, and you can even tell my parents that. If you do tell them, however, be sure to include how the esteemed and kind Gabriel decided to lie to their child, and make him slay an innocent person in the process, I finalized, expecting her to leave. A moment of silence passed, and I turned around to face her. She was actually on the ground, legs folded behind her as she lowered her head to the ground, in a submissive position. I felt my anger disperse as quickly as it had been riled up. I slowly walked over and lifted Gabriel up from the ground, noting that there was a slight tear running down the side of her face, which she tried to hide. Gabriel, I said softly, slowly, as I set her on her own 2 feet. She turned her gaze from me and lowered it. A look on her face nearly evaporated all of my anger. I'm sorry, Issei-kun. Please, I didn't mean to. Gabriel tried to say the sentence, hesitating and stopping every few words. She looked like a little child that had failed her parents, or a person that had cheated on her lover. Strange, how 2 things so different both described her. I sighed. Why are you being so dramatic about how I feel towards you? I asked her after a while, and she took her time in answering, keeping her gaze lowered. Isn't it obvious? She sniffed. I love you. When you're unhappy with me, it makes me unhappy. Also, I simply stared at her in disbelief. She didn't honestly believe that I would believe her, did she? Love her. She was an angel, I was a human, one that had previously been a devil, and had just gotten enraged at her, and chastised her severely. So why? Don't lie, I said after a long, awkward pause between the two of us. She finally raised her head, and I saw the heart-wrenching look in her eyes, those of a puppy that had been kicked by its owner. I tried to ignore it. You have no reason to love me. The only reason you would show any affection towards me is if is for the contract, and for your faction to have powerful dragon kids, or whatever. Don't try to trick me. The only thing you would ever do to me affectionately would be in plans to mate. I protested slowly, trying to back away. Her eyes, they were influencing my thought. My eyes trailed from her eyes lower, to her lips, then to her neck, and then even lower. No, I couldn't think like that. I couldn't allow myself to be seduced. To my great shock, Gabriel chuckled a bit, sadly. You have no idea what most men would do if a beautiful female offered themselves up to them on a silver platter, Gabriel said wistfully. I sighed as she seemed to try and stop crying. I'm not like most people, I said slowly, a bit relieved that she had stopped her little act. Gabriel muttered something incoherent, and I tried to hear what she had said, but couldn't catch it. She didn't say it again, so I let myself ignore it. In any case, that was your only warning, Gabriel. Don't try to make me do the angel faction's dirty work ever again, I said, though it felt a little empty. I closed one eye and quickly stepped back away from Gabriel, giving both of us a little space as I lifted my arm and scratched my head a bit. I won't, Gabriel said after another long, awkward pause. We locked eyes again, and I quickly turned my gaze, not wanting her to know that I had been staring at her. I could still feel her gaze on me though, and so I roughly coughed, trying to change the subject. In any case, there are 3 or 4 more issues I want to talk with you about, I said after my fake cough. Gabriel didn't say anything, so I continued. First of all, Asia Argento. Is there any way for her to rejoin the church, or to be pardoned and allowed to not be called a heretic all the time and stuff? I asked, and Gabriel gave me I can only guess contemplative look. No, she said after a while, and I let my disappointment show in my facials, letting my gaze drop to the side, and I lifted my hands, holding my arms with them crossed. Oh, I said, unfortunately, once you leave the church by being called a heretic, there aren't any ways back in. If she died and had a good life, full of praying and kindness, then she would ascend to angel status. But that's the only way, Gabriel said after another pause. I sighed. Wow, the whole devil fallen angel circle is really screwed up. I commented, and she gave me a shrug. Not really much I can do about it. I can tell Michael, if you want, she offered, and I nodded. If you feel like it. Okay, my next point that I think we need to discuss. Living quarters. I'd like to know if my fake parents are still living at the house, and if they are, if it's possible for them to leave. You see, I want Rainier and Asia to live there with me, I stated, and Gabrielle chewed her lip. Sure, they can leave. However, we can't leave you completely without guards of some sort, she stated, and I nodded. Of course, I am not against there being guards posted around the house, or even a chaperone. However, I would prefer it if they kept out of sight. Is that clear enough? I checked, and she nodded after a split second, a strange smile forming on her face, her eyes looking at something other than what they were actually physically looking at. Oh, I'm sure I'll be able to get you a guard or two, and a chaperone, for that matter. Your last thing, Gabrielle said, snapping out of her trance. I stared at her for a moment, before mentally shrugging. The next thing I want to talk to you about is Asia's tongue, I said, blushing at her chuckling after I said so. Her tongue. What, is there something wrong with it? Gabrielle asked me, and I sighed. I meant the tongue she speaks. I can't speak Italian without D-Drag and Albion's help, and it'll be too troublesome for her to live in Japan without knowing Japanese. Is there any sort of blessing you can give her that'll allow her to speak the same language as me? I asked, and she thought for a moment, before nodding. It's done. I gave her a blessing that allows her language to instantly translate to another language. Though she doesn't know how to read or write Japanese, for obvious reasons. Is that it? No. The last thing should be rather obvious, actually. When's my next mission, and what will it be about? Also, when do I start my training? I questioned, and she thought for a moment, before responding. Actually, now that you mention it, there was something I was supposed to tell you. Oh right. For your next mission, it'll involve a lot of swords, including your own, Gabrielle said, pointing out the strange blade that was still slung on my back. I raised an eyebrow as she continued. Some objects of importance were stolen from the church. Your mission will be to retrieve them. However, it will not be time for that mission to begin for some time. 3 days from now is when you will start the mission, and 2 days from now your partners for the mission will show up, and you will have a bit of training tomorrow as well, Gabrielle told me. Everything seemed to be okay. Wait. Partners? Oh yes, I haven't really mentioned that, have I? Gabrielle asked the rhetorical question. For this mission, we found it suitable for 2 of our own trainees to go with you. Do not worry, they will not be dead weight, and should be able to hold their own in the case of a battle, she promised. But I felt a huge sense of dread overcome me as I imagined the 2 other people that would be going with me. Perhaps they would be okay. No, definitely not. I was sure that Gabrielle sent the worst, most annoying 2 males she could find to go with me on the mission. I would just have to convince Asia and Rainier to come with me. Before I forget, those 2 can't come with you. Oh, and I have to get a guard or 2 and a chaperone for your house now, so please excuse me. It was nice talking to you, Issei, Gabrielle finished before I could protest about the partners. I groaned as her form shimmered in white light, before vanishing completely. Damn it. I cursed aloud as I could, and I heard it bounce off the walls, my voice echoing no doubt through the entire cavern. In a fury, I walked briskly to where I thought the group would be, judging by the distant footsteps and faint talking. I finally found them in one of the smaller chambers, where Ark was showing where they would live if I couldn't provide a place. I growled as I saw them, my mind fuzzy from Gabrielle. Asia, I said, and she flinched a little before the entire group turned and she gave a hesitant, yes. Can you heal exhaustion? I asked bluntly, and Asia thought for a moment, before nodding. I thanked her, before turning towards Ark. Hey Ark, is there anywhere good for me to release some pent-up magic? I think it's making me agitated, I said, and he nodded, pointing directly up. You do realize we are below the monster familiar forest for devils, right? Ark responded, and I nodded, a little embarrassed that I hadn't realized that. Rainier and Asia, however, both looked really surprised. Ark probably hadn't told them that yet. I'll be back later. The woman that stopped by earlier said that we should be able to live at my house, with a chaperone and some guards, so you won't be sleeping here. Be back in less than 20, I finalized, before I went out one of the not trap-filled paths, blasting a hole through the ground in the process. I came out of the ground and noticed it was still a full moon. Oh right, the day hadn't changed at all. Before I wasted my power for no reason, I consulted D-Drag and Albion, who had been quiet for most of the time ever since I fought Rainair, suspiciously. Hey you guys, how do I change the type of attack I use? I'd rather not just spam lightning and fire all the time. I commented, and I got some quick responses. Albion explained. However, if you want, I could tell you a bit about magician magics, D-Drag offered, and I raised an eyebrow. Magician? I asked softly, and I felt a nod. Do you remember the tales of Merlin? Well, they were true for the most part, and from them, people studied and managed to create their own versions of his magic, which is based more on logic and thought than simple thought. There is more theorizing required, and don't even get me started on Norse and Chinese magics, D-Drag stated, shuddering in my mind. I never knew you knew so much about magic, D-Drag. In fact, I thought you only knew dragons' magic, like me. When we have hosts, they can't exactly control our power all that well, after all, Albion commented. Unlike you, I spawned quickly. When you weren't around, I was just latent, and the person that could have had me was like a normal human. One of these normal humans eventually became one of the leaders of the magical community, before he eventually died. You never did revive that lifetime, D-Drag commented. Albion nodded. In any case, I think I'll try the devil magic first, alright. Please watch me and tell me if I do anything too awkwardly or wrong, I requested, and I slowly lifted my two hands left over right. There was a slight distance between them as I clenched my hands, focusing power into the little space between them. Okay, ice, I said to myself slowly as I poured more and more power into the little space. Slowly but surely, a small red magic circle appeared, spinning in the small space. I simply knew somehow that the power inside of the little circle was ice composed, and without thinking, I lifted it above my head in both hands, a strange circle trailing between my hands, before I quickly thrust my two hands in a claw-like motion at a nearby tree. I later noticed that the magic circle would spin to a stop and glow a bright blue before a huge amount of power was sent out. In front of me, controlled by my own magic, a blizzard of magic came out, and everything that it touched froze over. I thought for a moment. The energy drain was large at first, but now it was more steady as I fueled more power. I slowly moved my hands from side to side, and the blizzard followed, not showing any sign of dispersing. I smiled slowly, letting out the child in me, before making a small snowman out of a nearby tree. I never thought of how locals might get upset. My senses suddenly screamed for me to duck, and so I did, completely lowering my head as a little shadow passed over me, and I heard someone land gradually across the plains. I turned to see a girl in a ninja outfit, her boots having multiple laces all the way up, a mesh net on her legs and underneath her strange gi, and her dark purple hair let down and trailing. At her side I noticed a small pouch, and in her hand was a small ninja star. She glared at me with violet eyes. "Why are you attacking the forest?" she demanded, and I stared at her for a second. I'm not. I stopped, looking at the damage I had caused. An entire portion of the forest near Ark's lair had been frosted over. I looked back at her, slightly ashamed. "Hey, sorry," I asked. She shook her head. "Nature destroyer. You'll have to die," she growled, throwing the little object at me. Without thinking, I turned my hands towards her, as they were still directing the spell I had used earlier. She gave a little yelp of surprise before a large, strange-looking ice block formed around her, leaving only her head free and her thoroughly trapped. I sighed, still letting the ice spell continue as I looked at the ninja star frozen in the air, barely a meter from my face. "Hey, how do I turn this off?" I asked D-Drag and Albion. I got my answer, and separated my arms slowly, and the power drain ceased. Phew, okay then. Sorry for freezing some of the forest. I'll heat it up, if you want, I offered the girl, who was still frozen in ice. And no wait, don't. Too late. With the same motion, a large amount of fire swept through the frosty woods, and before I knew it, they were all back to the way they were before, just a little wet. I separated my arms. "There, all better," I said cheekily, proud of my success. I turned to see her glaring at me, and if looks could kill, she would have murdered me on the spot. "Excuse me," I said, after fixing the frosty forest. I turned away from the girl, and, feeling much better, decided to send one last final enormous blast to see how much damage I could cause. In the sky, of course, I had learned how destructive powers could be. D-Drag, Albion. The magician's magic, I said, ignoring the girl as she continued protesting. Use science and thought for it. Vibrations of molecules, slowing down of molecules, etc. D-Drag offered. I nodded, before closing my eyes a bit, still ignoring the girl who huffed at me before going to a nearby log and sitting down. And, warning, really nerdy part coming up, as I explain magician's magic in the way I see it. You have been warned, I thought. I imagined the air compressing as I lifted my hands, putting them like a mime to pretend there was a physical box in front of my chest, about a meter in length, width and height. I then made the air molecules compress even more, until eventually, vapor began to form, then liquid, which simply floated in the air, before it compressed once more, becoming a solid. The molecules in the solid were nearly completely stopped, and I smiled, pleased at my work. The cube was see-through, and quite physical. Does this count as biological? I asked silently, receiving negatives. In which case, I said, concentrating more. I imagined the particles within the container accelerating, going faster and faster. After nearly 10 seconds of concentration, a small flame burst to life in the container, before growing and nearly dying out. I panicked, before remembering what I had forgotten. I shifted around the particles at the very top of the solid, and the fire grew again, once again fueled by oxygen. I could almost feel the speed of the particles moving, and so, for fun, I decided to make them move even faster. The fire grew quicker, spreading out of the box due to how much oxygen it was eating up. It began to go onto my skin, and I panicked once more, only to realize that it wasn't burning me. Ignoring that little tidbit of information and storing it for later use, I felt a bit of stress on my head as I tried to stop the fire from spreading too far. It worked, and soon, the fire was contained again, though it was still amazingly hot, turning a bright blue, one of the hottest sun colors. Now then, I said, gathering much more energy than before. I breathed once, before directing my attention to the fast-moving particles. Stop, I commanded, and just like that, all of the rapidly moving particles stopped in mid-air, creating a sub-zero climate in the box. I yelped as the frost burned at my skin, dropping the box. A few strands of wisp came off of my fingers as I quickly willed the sub-zero to stop, returning it to normal. I noticed that the ninja girl was still watching, but I ignored her, deciding to do something more violent for a change. Condense rapidly, oxygen fuel as much as needed, speed to the max, I listed, imagining the molecules doing so. In my hands appeared a blazing inferno, streaked with every color possible. I breathed once before putting my arms back, the fire still compressed in each palm. I made the pressure exerted from the earth smaller as I sprung up, the momentary zero gravity propelling me high in the air. To add more momentum, I charged some devil's magic into my legs, shooting me even faster and higher. I looked up and saw the full moon seemingly staring at me. With a large, primal shout, I shot the fireballs, saying the first thing that came to mind. Divine Fire Blast. I shouted, bringing my flame-covered palms together. The fiery aura surged around me, combining a white flame and red flame together as they both shot straight out of the aura, with my conjoined palms as a base. The red and white flames swirled against each other as they trailed about 30 meters, before conjoining into one huge blast that illuminated most of the forest. I floated down, the fiery aura still surrounding me as the very ground was displaced as I stepped. The ninja from earlier was now slack-jawed as she stared at me, but I merely smiled back before turning around and going back into Ark's lair. That was fun.